Government pension. What are the facts? Are all public workers entitled to pension? Are public workers owed gratuity? Here are the facts. Fact 1. The Pension Disqualification Act of 1983 was validated on April 21, 1985 by the democratically elected government, led by former Prime Minister Herbert A. Blaise. This means that public workers employed after February 22, 1985 are not legally entitled to a pension from the government of Grenada. Fact 2. The judgment in the Hermelin Armstrong case does not create legal precedents for the reinstatement of pension to public workers employed after February 22, 1985. The judgment created a legal precedence only for those workers who joined the public service in a pensionable post between April 4, 1983 and February 22, 1985. There were 56 such workers. The government restored pension to those 56 workers in 2018 at a cost of $7.7 million. Fact 3. All officers employed in a pensionable post who joined the service after February 22, 1985 are not legally entitled to a pension from government. They are only entitled to a pension from NIS once they meet the necessary requirements as per the NIS Act. Fact 4. The Cabinet's decision in 2016 to reform pension is rooted in moral and social justice principles, and it is not a legal obligation. Therefore, any agreement on pension is a win for public workers. Fact 5. The MOU signed between government, the unions, and staff associations in February and March 2018 stated that the pension regime which will be implemented must be affordable and sustainable. Fact 6.
Honorable members, today we are resuming from the adjournment in the debate on the presentation of the budget. Let me just advise, I know you are well acquainted with the time limits and the time you have to speak for. You have 1 hour to deliberate. At the discretion of the Speaker, you may be given some extra time. At the end of the hour, the bell would ring. If you so desire extra time, please make your requests known. We may be very generous. I have another announcement to make, but I would wait until the parties so involved are here. Honorable members, we are free to begin. Honorable Representative for St. Andrew Northwest and Minister for Social Development and Housing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I first want to commend you for heeding the call of your parliamentary representative by removing the wig and taking a forward step in getting rid of colonialism in Grenada.
Thank you.
Those things that we can do without a referendum, I think we should do that. Mr. Speaker, I rise to give my unconditional support to the estimates of income and expenditure that was well laid before the House yesterday. Our award-winning finance minister and our beloved Prime Minister presented a package that will encourage further growth in the economy, and that is sensitive to the needs of all sectors of the society, especially the marginalized. With the growing economic activities and unemployment falling, income rising, and taxes falling, this government is adding another rock to the long term of fiscal stability to this nation. We appreciate, Mr. Speaker, that fiscal health is necessary. It's a necessary foundation for sustained growth, and our finance minister, we know, is cognizant of that fact in the face of many challenges and demands. We note with satisfaction that this is the 6th successive year of growth, a rebirth that has followed our worst recession in more than a generation. Indeed, this is a tale about 2 eras, and indeed, 2 leaders. Earlier this year, the working class people of Grenada voted overwhelmingly to let the progress continue. That is why, Mr. Speaker, the economic activity is set to grow even further next year, as our Minister of Finance reported yesterday. But, Mr. Speaker, these are things that none of us should take for granted. And our actions must ensure we consolidate the gains, not undermine it. As Bob Marley once sang, in this great future, we cannot forget the past. May I add, Mr. Speaker, in this great future, mischief must not replace solidarity, nor chaos a substitute for responsibility. A great future beckons, Mr. Speaker, because we know that after more than 35 years, pensions are coming back. The fact there is even a debate about what the advance payment should be is a testament to the progress we have made and a testament to the seriousness of this government's commitment. In this great future, Mr. Speaker, we cannot forget the past of late payments, no salaries increases, and not even the dream of tackling pensions. As a caring and sensitive government, we are clear in our vision that budgets are not just about seeking to balance the books, but also seeking to balance the lives of ordinary people. That's why, Mr. Speaker, I am particularly pleased with the emphasis and allocation that have been put into social services and the work we do among the weakest and most vulnerable among our population. We are pleased to note, Mr. Speaker, that there is a greater allocation to work in the defense of families, to work in the vanguard to save our children, and to work to save our youth from the brink. No woman, no cry. Every little thing's gonna be all right. Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Finance outlined a comprehensive plan to advance social development. In this regard, the government is walking the walk by investing more in housing, gender and family, and juvenile justice. That is why we say, Mr. Speaker, no woman, no cry. For every little thing, we're gonna be all right. Under Saving the Family, Mr. Speaker, a few months ago, we established a special victims unit, which I'll speak more to when I get in depth in my speech. Mr. Speaker, we have declared our willing and our determination to fight this scourge, working closely with our neighbors, and therefore, as a government, we are committed. But, Mr. Speaker, before I go into the depth of my presentation, I, as a mother, will want to speak to the issue that confront us at this time. Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that I thought for 12 years, and I do understand the plight of the teacher. In fact, the teachers I will support any increase for the teachers. My children attend the St. Andrews Anglican Secondary School, and I'm proud to commend the teachers there for their hard work and dedication. My daughter attends the Anglican High School, and I too can commend them because I know the task of a teacher. And therefore, I would not say that teachers do not deserve the increase that they're asking for. But, Mr. Speaker, it must be in content in what we can pay as a government and how we can pay it, Mr. Speaker. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to address a grave concern that we have noted the attempt to use our children, and I'm a mother also, to get involved in partisan agitation, in many instances doing so without parents' permission. As a mother, when we send our children to school, we should not accept any attempt to use our children. It's an attempt of naked exploitation that must be condemned. It is important to note that some of the people who are identified in the forefront are not even teachers, but well-known political agitators who will not stop at no end in the cause for confusion in this country. Their interest is neither this of the children nor the teachers. In fact, they do not want to see a resolution to the issue of pension. Because if they were honest with themselves, Mr. Speaker, they would advise our union leaders to get back to the negotiation table. We cannot find solution outside of the negotiation table. The only way we can find the solution is on the negotiating table. And there where we should be negotiating, Mr. Speaker. We call on our parents to ensure that our children remain safe and disciplined and not drawn into any activity that can be detrimental to them. History must not repeat itself, and our students must not be allowed to be exploited or to be made pawns in issues that they may not even fully understand. Mr. Speaker, I beg everyone, including the union leaders, to get back to the negotiating table. Let us negotiate. Let us see how we can work out an amicable solution to the issue that is now confronting us. Mr. Speaker, as I get into my budget presentation, I first must give God a high note of praise and thanks for having me back here, second term in office, but not only second term, Mr. Speaker, but a second time being the Minister of Social Development, Housing, and now Community Empowerment. Mr. Speaker, the decision I do not take lightly. And I want to commend the people within the Ministry of Social Development and Housing, Mr. Speaker, because I believe that most of us share the same passion. And though we may have different political affiliation, we share the same cause. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, that God has answered the prayers. And I recalled when the Prime Minister was deciding, in fact, I was prepared to go somewhere else. I spent 5 years in one ministry, and therefore I was prepared in my mind that maybe I should be moved somewhere else. But I recall that my ministry went down in prayer and fasting and intercession. And I believe that God has answered the prayer, and we are back to continue the job of serving our people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Pidimotnik, Mr. Speaker. I do not take that lightly, because I believe the Bible said for everything there is a season. And I believe this is my season to be there in the Ministry of Social Development, Mr. Speaker, and to perform at the best of my ability despite of political affiliation. I believe, Mr. Speaker, that we are committed within that ministry, Mr. Speaker, to deal with the issue that confronts family within our trial state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Pidimotnik, Mr. Speaker. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I will do only my best, because only my best will be good enough. Despite the fact that I came through the ministry through votes and through to be elected by the Prime Minister or to be there, I will work for everyone despite of the political affiliation. My team and within the ministry know my stand, and I want to applaud them for for continuing to work to support vulnerable families. Mr. Speaker, the first I would like to look at is the protection, child protection. Child protection, Mr. Speaker, is something that this government is committed to protecting every boy and every girl. In fact, we are committed to protecting families within the tri-island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. That is why, Mr. Speaker, earlier on I said we set up a special victims unit within the CID of the Royal Grenada Police Force and a hotline 400, Mr. Speaker, that people can call to report. I'm pleased to report, Mr. Speaker, that the team within the special victim unit, we have people there who are passionate and who are working beyond their calls of duty. And I think the person who's in charge is with us this morning, Ms. Cadet Noel, who's doing a tremendous work in dealing with the issue of child sexual abuse and gender-based violence and all forms of abuse among women and families. Mr. Speaker, I want to applaud the CID department. I also want to applaud the Commissioner of Police, Mr. Speaker, because when he was appointed as Commissioner, within the first week we met, and in short order, we were able to establish the Special Victims Unit and Hotline, and they are doing a tremendous job, Mr. Speaker, and they must be commended for the hard work and dedication. Mr. Speaker, they have a number of cases dealing with, a number of our young children, Mr. Speaker, needing care and protection. Mr. Speaker, if we are going to protect our children, we cannot have the police officers only identifying the cases and then when there are issues, we just leave them back in the same places or we move them to other places where they can be abused more. And Mr. Speaker, this government will be purchasing a building to the tune of $2.6 million, which will act as a safe house for girls. Mr. Speaker, it will not just be a building to put girls. We will have well-trained staff. We'll have social workers and counselors. They will be attending school as normal, and they will be properly taken care of, Mr. Speaker. We believe that we must protect our girls. We must protect our boys. We must protect our family. We are committed to ending the scourge of child sexual and all forms of abuse. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work. Last year, and the Prime Minister spoke of it, we talked of establishing the Special Victims Unit, and we have already seen that. We also, Mr. Speaker, is looking at the Sexual Offenders Registry, and we are finalizing the model that will be used in Grenada. We have spoken to the Commissioner of Police and the hierarchy of the police force who have given us some ideas that what they think is best suited. We are now engaging the legal people within the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and within the first half of next year, Mr. Speaker, we will come back to this Parliament to have this Sexual Offenders Registry to help, Mr. Speaker. We are hoping that all these things will help to get rid of the scourge of child sexual abuse and all forms of abuse among our children. Mr. Speaker, this government is committed to working along, is committed to supporting families, is committed to doing what it takes, Mr. Speaker, to eradicate all forms of abuse. Mr. Speaker, housing. We continue to have a large number of our population looking for housing assistance from government. This government is committed to assisting the most vulnerable despite of political affiliation. And I always like to stress political affiliation, especially when I have my constituency here with me. And sometimes most of them, they are supporter and sympathizer of the NNP. And so, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about providing for all, sometimes we still have them saying, why are you giving those persons when they voted against you? So in the Honorable House, Mr. Speaker, I want to stress again that we have a responsibility to serve everyone who needs our assistance. That is why, Mr. Speaker, close to 1,000 families received assistance during this year under the house repair program. Mr. Speaker, the program is really a house repair program. Sometimes in the case of fire or when the houses are beyond repair, we go beyond the call of duty. But the program that we have in the ministry really is a house repair program. Mr. Speaker, over the last couple of years with the house repair program, we have seen issues with the program in terms of giving assistance to families. It's left under the house. You hear people sold material. Mr. Speaker, this is the state resources, and we must be accountable for everything what we are doing as a government. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, this government has taken a decision to employ persons through the work brigade. So this work brigade provides permanent employment opportunities for over 100 persons, Mr. Speaker. But also they assist needy families in repairing their houses. And in instances where we have to rebuild, they also provide that assistance. This government is committed to providing housing assistance for the most vulnerable. This government is committed to doing what it takes to make the lives of our people better, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, also within the Housing Authority of Grenada, we have a loan, soft loan, there where many families, over 100 families in this year, earlier in the year, Mr. Speaker, got support from that program, up to $15,000, and I'm pleased to report that from 2019, we are going back to increase that allocation to $30,000 that people can build a house from that program. So, Mr. Speaker, we will continue to work with the Housing Authority of Grenada. And I also want to report, Mr. Speaker, that the Housing Authority of Grenada has built 18 houses in this year, and they are expected to build over 21 more houses, Mr. Speaker. These are public servants who are using the Housing Authority. And I know many of you saw the ad of the Housing Authority. They are cheaper than other contractors, and therefore, if you're going to be building your house, I ask you to look at the Housing Authority of Grenada, because they give you free plans. You get your plan free, and you will pay a lot less, and you do not have to worry of going and pay contractor piece and wonder what they're doing. The Housing Authority take full control and give you a well-safe house at the end of the day at a reasonable cost. So I urge you, once you can get your loans from the bank, you can utilize the Housing Authority of Grenada. The Housing Authority of Grenada also is in real business. In fact, they have the best certified blocks on the island, and therefore, if you are looking for blocks, you can also purchase it at the Housing Authority of Grenada. Mr. Speaker, the Housing Authority of Grenada, you must take note that before 2008 was an abandoned ship. And therefore, this government must be commended for the work that we are doing in terms of seriously addressing and dealing with the housing need of our people. We don't just talk the talk, Mr. Speaker, but we walk the walk. We don't only wait to be in opposition to run our mouth on the radio and TV and in social media, Mr. Speaker, but we are committed to working. We are committed to serving the people of our tri-island state of Grenada, Cervical, and Martinique. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Social Development provides services for early childhood. So we are in charge of all daycares. We have 10 government daycares at present, and we are also in charge to provide oversight of even the private daycares. Mr. Speaker, we will see in 2019 a new daycare will be in Mountain St. Andrews, will be part of what the government is doing to provide for children, to provide a safe place where parents can leave their children and look for training opportunities, look for jobs, and know that that is a cheaper way to provide for your children, Mr. Speaker. We as a government will look after the need of every child within our tri-island state of Grenada, Cervical, and Martinique. We continue to provide assistance in counseling and other support for grieving families and other issues, families of gender-based violence and other form of abuse, Mr. Speaker. The government will provide support for them through the ministry, Mr. Speaker. In the case of fire, we not only provide building material, but we also provide other support to assist families, including counseling. we will continue to provide that within the new year. The unit recognizes, Mr. Speaker, the importance of quality early childhood and stimulation and its implication. As a result, the care providers continuously partake in professional development for both private and public daycare centers, including the caregivers of PAM. These areas include disaster risk management for over 30 daycare centers, including Carriacou and PD Martinique, psycho-educational training to 17 private daycare supervisors. We build the capacity of 37, including Carriacou and PD Martinique, parents with early childhood strategies to strengthen the interaction with their children. Mr. Speaker, the social development also deals with our elderly citizens. And we have said from time and time again that our elderly citizens have made tremendous contribution to the building of this beautiful tri-island state of ours. And therefore, as a government, we believe that we have an obligation to provide assistance for those who are vulnerable. I want to stress vulnerable in the twilight years, Mr. Speaker. And that is why we continue to provide home care programs for families who are unable to help themselves, for elderly citizens who do not have anyone to take care of themselves. We continue to provide home care service for them, Mr. Speaker. We also provide the support in terms of the financial assistance every month for those who are vulnerable and unable to assist themselves. We need to stress that, Mr. Speaker, because too many times people come to you asking for a pension because they attain 60 years. The support for elderly within the ministry is not a support for because you attain 60, but because you need, because you do not have means of income and you meet the criteria to get on the program. Mr. Speaker, this criteria has to be met by the proximins testing system by the ministry. It is nothing where your parliamentary representative or somebody can identify and then you just get on. Sometimes you listen in social media and on the news and different places and or calling programs, and opposition elements will make you believe that we are putting on people because they're supporting us. This is false, Mr. Speaker. Everyone who gets in on the program is because they've gone through the process, and that will continue, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we celebrated the month of the elderly just recently, and we visited Carriacou, where we have the oldest person on the island, Miss Massima, Mr. Speaker, and we also visited the home for the aged in Carriacou. In Grenada, Mr. Speaker, we visited the Cajona home, and many representatives visited elderly and had activities for many elderly citizens within their constituency. We celebrated the 100th birthday of a lady within Mrs. Hotspur's constituency, Mr. Speaker. We continue to recognize and celebrate when our elderly citizens reach 100 years, Mr. Speaker. And they have a story to tell: contentment, the food they eat, hard work, Mr. Speaker, love, prayers. Those are the things that kept them and have them for all those years. I would not say rum, Mr. Speaker, as the member for St. Andrews Southwest would want me to say, because I know rum will kill you instead of it can make you live longer. Mr. Speaker, we continue to provide Pampers assistance for vulnerable families who need their assistance, and we want to commend our donors, because all the Pampers that we have, we get it from people who live in the diaspora. They send Pampers, wheelchairs, beds, and all that, and therefore we want to thank them for the continued support that they are giving us. Mr. Speaker, we are also involved the probation unit is also part of what we do, and we continue to provide services to the magistrate and high court. We continue to engage with schools to provide additional support services on anti-bullying and other antisocial behaviors. We have summer programs Mr. Speaker, we have been reviewing community-based services for offenders to enhance the quality of service provided. The unit is in the process of restructuring. Mr. Speaker, I want to move to the support for education, empowerment, and development, SEED. And SEED really, Mr. Speaker, is our flagship program. It's the flagship program in safety net reform by this government. The past year has been a highly productive and rewarding one as the program experienced the finalization of all major milestones under its implementation arrangement with the World Bank. Our beneficiary management information system is now deployed and functional. It is considered a masterpiece and is envied by everyone in the region. Mr. Speaker, in fact, we have been called on a weekly basis to share that with the OECS, Mr. Speaker, and other regional countries are asking us to share with them. And they are paying for a team of our people to be there. They are having conference calls, Mr. Speaker. It will be used as a model in the region. And we must commend the SEED unit, the SEED manager, the entire SEED officers, every one of them, our permanent secretary, and the entire ministry, Mr. Speaker, for ensuring that we are where we are now as it relates to the support of education. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Prime Minister, in his presentation, revealed that we got over $550 because of this full implementation. The theme for this year's budget is building resilience and advancing social development, transforming our economy and enshrined in the concept of SEED. In this regard, I'm happy to report that the promise of increasing the grants to elderly household was realized, and so a total of 3,040 elderly households are better able to take care of their needs. Mr. Speaker, we are committed to providing assistance for elderly. Mr. Speaker, one of the issues we had was our elderly citizens being lined up in long lines and fainting. What we have done, Mr. Speaker, is work along with the Ministry of Finance and to get them to open accounts in different banks and credit unions. And those who do not have accounts, Mr. Speaker, what we have also done is to ensure that payment is a lot earlier so that they do not involve in the rush when other public servants are receiving their salaries. We will continue to do what it takes, Mr. Speaker, to make the life of our elderly citizens better for Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, support for education does not only provide assistance, the state unit, does not only provide for elderly, as it states, education. So we provide assistance for children who are in school also. We provide up to term CC and even at SGU for vulnerable families who are unable to provide for themselves. We continue to believe that only through education we can uplift our families. Only through education we can make them remove from dependent, to independent, Mr. Speaker. This government is committed to continuing to provide for our boys, our girls, and our families. We are continuing to provide educational assistance for those needy families among us. And in the new year, Mr. Speaker, we will look to see how more families who need our assistance can get on the program. Mr. Speaker, we continue as a government to look at the issue of juvenile justice system, and we are strengthening the juvenile justice system of Grenada, Mr. Speaker. We have the Grand Bacalet Rehabilitation Center, which means that our young offenders no longer have to be in the prison with seasoned criminals, but they will be in a place where they will get treatment, Mr. Speaker, counseling and all that, Mr. Speaker, training. They are able to continue their education. And as a government, we are committed to continuing to provide assistance. We want to thank UNICEF, UNAID, and all the other development partners for assisting us in that regard. We have introduced an assessment process upon apprehension of a child. psychological assessment tools purchased with support from UNICEF at a cost of over $32,000. This was the demand since the Act requires assessment of children. We have ongoing juvenile justice activities. We have installed TerrorScribe software to collect data on children in conflict with the law, Mr. Speaker, and we continue to work along with children who are getting themselves in conflict with the law at not only at the Baccalaureate Center, but within the schools and within their communities. Counseling, Mr. Speaker, the ministry continues to provide psychosocial services for all Grenadian citizens. Providing psychological support to individuals and families in times of crisis. Mr. Speaker, we'll continue to do, as a government, what is expected of us. Gender and family affairs. Mr. Speaker, last Monday we celebrated International Men's Day. We believe that to have an effective family, the men must be involved in the process. We must celebrate our men. We have seen the tremendous success of men within our trial and state, and therefore, Mr. Speaker, we must do things to continue to celebrate our men and celebrate families. So women, men, boys and girls, we will be working to celebrate together, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the issue of gender equality and gender cannot be underestimated, Mr. Speaker. But I want to commend our Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. When you look around in this honorable house, Mr. Speaker, 47 is 46.6, but when you round it up, you get 47% of the representative among us are female, and we must commend our Prime Minister and commend us, Mr. Speaker, for getting involved in politics, Mr. Speaker, and getting involved in frontline politics, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, women in politics, we have to go through so much, Mr. Speaker. The treatment is different to what is meted out to the men. And while I commend our men folk for taking leadership position, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the 7 beautiful ladies within this house, Mr. Speaker, for taking that bold initiative. Not many people will do that. Not many people will put up themselves for ridicules. Not many people will put up themselves to be character or assassinated. And therefore, you must I must commend you for being here, Mr. Speaker. Too many times, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about gender equality and we talk about bringing women in the forefront in leadership position, we are being cried down, Mr. Speaker. We are being looked at differently, Mr. Speaker. It is sad, Mr. Speaker, that some people get their PhD without any official studying, Mr. Speaker. And this PhD in which they receive, they cannot use it to uplift themselves, nor could they use it to uplift anyone around them. And this PhD is pull her down. They use social media, Mr. Speaker, to pull her down. And even to pull him down, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, why would you want to pull down a woman who have given up her family most of the times and bring herself to represent these people, the beautiful trial and state of your country? What we are saying to other women, to other young ladies who are looking on and say, maybe I can make a contribution in the house or somewhere in leadership position. But because when you look at social media, yes, you have a right, you can speak freely, but because you can speak freely doesn't mean that you have to use that to ridicule the leaders, especially the women who give themselves up. Sometimes, Mr. Speaker, you leave your families home, you give up your families. We are mothers. We are human beings like anyone else. We come from your communities, Mr. Speaker. And when you look in social media and you see what is being written about our women folks, we are not here, Mr. Speaker, because we are looking to steal monies from the government coffers. We are here because we believe we can make an honest contribution to the building of a trial and state of Grenada, Carriacou, and PD Martinique, Mr. Speaker. We are here, Mr. Speaker, because we believe we have a voice, and we believe we have a place, and we believe that as women, we can make a major contribution to the development of our trial and state, Mr. Speaker. We are not here because we want to be with every male folk within the house. You know, sometimes, Mr. Speaker, when you read the things, it's like you with everybody. We have husbands, and we have husbands, we have children in school who are looking and reading what is in the social media. You give our children different fathers to who their fathers are really, Mr. Speaker, because of political reasoning, Mr. Speaker. How can you encourage, Mr. Speaker, seriously, when we're talking about gender equality and letting women be part of all the decision-making process, how can we put ourselves up, Mr. Speaker, when we are looked on differently to the men? When our children have to be looking and reading and having to be ridiculed by others, Mr. Speaker. And sometimes, Mr. Speaker, it hurts deep. Because even the persons, Mr. Speaker, at times that you do so much for, and even in a private setting, Mr. Speaker, my grandmother said, Mr. Speaker, that sometimes the right hand does not know what the left hand is doing. But she also said, Mr. Speaker, that kindness sometimes, that ungratefulness sometimes brings reproach. Because, Mr. Speaker, when you look in social media and you look at what some people are writing, Mr. Speaker, we are not opposed to any public officers getting salaries or getting whatever is due unto them. We believe that they work hard and whatever is due unto them, Mr. Speaker. But when you're going to use that particular issue to ridicule us as female, Mr. Speaker, and character assassinate us, Mr. Speaker, it speaks volume. And he's saying to young women outside there that politics is not the place for you. That you cannot make a contribution to develop your country because you will be ridiculed. Because your children will be put on scrutiny. Sometimes my children come home from school, Mr. Speaker, and they have concerns because they have been approached by others, even people in leadership position making particular statements, Mr. Speaker. And I feel compelled, Mr. Speaker, to raise those issues here this morning, Mr. Speaker, because we in the Ministry of Social Development, we are talking about uplifting families. We are talking about gender and involving women in all forms of activities as men. Politics is one of them. We are saying that women should also be involved in construction and fisheries and all this other stuff. And we are working to put programs in place as a ministry, Mr. Speaker, to deal with those particular issues. But when we have to deal, when the women are being ridiculed in such a way, we must, Mr. Speaker, deal with those issues. It's a vexing issue that must be addressed and cannot be left like that, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in wrapping up on the ministry, I want to also talk on the issue of Aspire project. The ACE is as President, Mr. Speaker, they are actively committed and empowered youth rehabilitation pilot project in Moncton, where over 25 young people between the ages of 16 and 25 will be involved, Mr. Speaker. In August, a rapid assessment study of factors affecting male participants in training activities and programs was conducted. Results of the study were presented to key stakeholders in October. The results will be used to design an integrated training program which includes soft skill, remedial literacy and numeracy, technical and vocational training, livelihood enhancement. Beneficiaries will be school dropouts, unemployed youths, youth subject to sentencing by the court, stipulated participation in the technical and vocational training, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Project REACH, which is in Her Majesty's Prison. This is also part of the major project. This is a rehabilitation and integration project for youth offenders between the ages of 18 and 35 years at Her Majesty's prisons. We are in the last year of their remand. This is the third installment of the program. The 2018 program was launched on July 10th. 29 young inmates are currently enrolled in the year-long program. Activities include remedial literacy and numeracy, life skill training, and technical and vocational skill training. In 2019, they will involve in Tibet up to the CBQ level in facility maintenance, poetry rearing, and crop production, training in customer service, small business development, performing arts, and sports. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to look at programs to help to deal with all our school dropouts, and we'll continue to work with our partners, our development partners, to provide funding for those different programs. Mr. Speaker, I would now want to not leave out my constituency, Mr. Speaker. So I will first want to thank the people in St. Andrews Northwest for selecting me as their representative to serve at the second consecutive term. I want to say to you, I do not take that lightly. I do not take your trust in me lightly, and therefore I am committed to continue working along with you. I'm committed to building the beautiful constituency of St. Andrews Northwest. I'm committed to bringing jobs and looking for more jobs for the people within the constituency. I'm committed to assisting in providing employment opportunities, together with you, Mr. Speaker, to the people of the beautiful constituency of St. Andrews Northwest. I do not take lightly, Mr. Speaker, for one moment, my responsibility to serve the people of St. Andrews Northwest. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I do not only look at through the government means to provide employment opportunities, but as their parliamentary representative, I also look within the private sector. And that is why I'm pleased to report, Mr. Speaker, that over 78 persons within my constituency, Mr. Speaker, have found permanent engagement. Some through the private sectors, some through the road wardens, and other programs through government. And permanent being continuous, Mr. Speaker, because I know sometimes the critic will look at permanent and say, well, you're not making a particular sector permanent, and how come you're making permanent in your thing? Permanent meaning that they are working continuously, Mr. Speaker, not like the debushing program where it's just seasonal. Mr. Speaker, under the Imani program, 52 young persons are now, new persons, Mr. Speaker, are now involved in the batch 6 of the Imani program. The much talked about Empower program that remove young men from the block. There are 33 persons within the constituency of St. Andrews Northwest who are involved in the program, Mr. Speaker. This is an excellent program, Mr. Speaker. And I must commend the Minister and the Ministry of Youth for this worthwhile initiative that will help to take our young men from the block, that will help our young men not to be involved in devious behaviors, but will be gainfully engaged in skill training, which in the end will assist them in finding jobs or forming cooperatives. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I am happy that we have this program. It's a first for Grenada, Mr. Speaker. You know, I was really happy, Mr. Speaker, at the launch of Empower. In one room, over 500 young men, Mr. Speaker, at-risk young men, in one room, looking to make positive changes, Mr. Speaker. The Ministry of Youth must be commended. Mr. Speaker, we continue within the constituency to look at adult literacy. Education is ongoing. That is why, Mr. Speaker, in 2019, at the Paraclete Government School, there will be an evening class there, adult literacy class, Mr. Speaker. We are in the final, we are now developing the final program for that, where it's children, when they come from school also, they can get the homework done, because there is an IT lab there, where we provided 3 computers, and the school was able to get a number of computers from other partners of the school. And therefore, this will be used in the afternoon for people within the Paraclete, Moncton, and surrounding areas in that adult literacy program. We continue to work along with our schools, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, can I have 15 more minutes?
Yes, Honorable Representative.
We continue to work along with all the schools within the constituency, Mr. Speaker, meet with the principals and see what are the needs. What are the needs of the children? Who are the most vulnerable children? How can we help? How can we provide assistance to the children, Mr. Speaker? Always indicating that education is what will get us out of the vicious cycle of poverty. Mr. Speaker, we continue to provide, as a government, scholarship assistance for persons within St. Andrews Northwest, Mr. Speaker, or Grenada as a whole, but St. Andrews Northwest has received 13 persons, not all full scholarship, but some get tuition assistance to go to UE and SU from the Needy Assistance Program. Mr. Speaker, I must say that this is a first for the people of St. Andrews Northwest. When I look within the constituency, Mr. Speaker, and I look at many of the different villages, before now, there were no one in some areas with any first degree or so. And therefore, in many of those areas now, we are seeing more persons coming forward to access the assistance that the government is giving. This government has done so much, Mr. Speaker. This government is committed to providing assistance for all of our people, not some of our people, Mr. Speaker, but all of our people. Infrastructure, Mr. Speaker, we have done a number of roads within the constituency in the year under review. We have done the Cemetery Road in Moncton. We have done the Back Street in Byland, the Tamsisi Road in Maribor, the Crab Street Road in Paradise, the Lakabeke Road. So a number of roads were done, Mr. Speaker, and more will be done, Mr. Speaker. And I'm pleased to report that the much talked about Clabony Road project will commence in 2019. Mr. Speaker, Clabony is a tourist product, and therefore we look forward, the people of Byland and surrounding area, and in fact the people of Grenada are looking forward to that Clabony Road project to be implemented. Mr. Speaker, earlier in my presentation I said within the area of the village of Moncton, we will have a state-of-the-art child development center which will help to provide a safe haven for children, for parents who are looking to get skill training and parents who are looking to find employment. They now can leave their children in a safe place at that center, which will be completed in 5 months from now. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank UNICEF and the UN system and the India Aid for providing the finances for this major project. Mr. Speaker, I am also pleased to report that within the next week, we will have a major project in St. Andrews as fitness and resource center will start at that area. The fitness, Mr. Speaker, we believe that we have to encourage our people to take care of their life, proper diet, exercise, and therefore this fitness center will serve as a place of exercise, and the resource center will serve to help our children with homework and to help provide adult literacy classes on the afternoon. Mr. Speaker, we are committed to continue working to provide for our farmers. We are continuing to provide elderly support, Mr. Speaker. We are continuing to work and provide home care for our elderly. We are continuing to provide support of many families within the St. Andrews Northwest are getting elderly families the $300 increase. We are working with every sector of our families, our children, our farmers, Mr. Speaker. We continue to work and serve every one of them, Mr. Speaker. We believe, Mr. Speaker, that as a government, we will be able to uplift family and to continue to provide support to the most vulnerable people within our tri-land state for those who cannot assist themselves. And I always stress for those who cannot assist themselves because, Mr. Speaker, there's a political divide within our tri-land state where people believe that it's our time and the opposition. Sometimes when you read the opposition comments, Mr. Speaker, you will believe for sure that what they're saying is factual, that we are not providing this for them and they're not getting this and whatever. Once they meet the requirement and in need, all assistance is provided and is there for every constituent within the constituency of St. Andrews Northwest. We'll continue to do infrastructural work, Mr. Speaker. We are looking at a second phase for the Kajuna Home for the Aged. We are looking also, Mr. Speaker, once we can find funding for the second phase for the St. Mary's RC School. So we will be looking to see if there are any funding that can be given to that school so that they can have the second phase and that the preschool can, and the other part of the school can be in a new building, a new place that can enhance learning and teaching. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the people within the constituency office for the hard work, for the dedication, for the professionalism, and understanding that they are not serving only the people who have voted for the New National Party. I want to thank the city officer, the housing officer, and every member of staff in the constituency. I want to thank the road wardens for the excellent job that they are doing. We look forward to continue working together, Mr. Speaker, not only as St. Andrews Northwest, but as St. Andrews. We, the 4 representatives from St. Andrews, we will be working together to bring benefits for St. Andrews. So we will be collaborating, looking at health, looking at education, looking at infrastructure development, and we will be four powerful voices to reckon with, Mr. Speaker, because we will be working for the interests of the people of St. Andrews and by extension, Grenada, Carriacou, and PD Martinique. Mr. Speaker, I also want to thank my permanent secretary for the hard work and dedication, the entire team within the ministry, every member within my management staff, and every member in all the different departments for your hard work, for your dedication. I know it's not easy at times, it's difficult because what we do really serve the most vulnerable. Sometimes we have to cry with them, Mr. Speaker. Sometimes we have to shove our hands in our pockets to deal with issues that confront the elderly people and needy people within our trial and state. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, when I see certain things being written in social media, it hurts, Mr. Speaker. Because when you see those things written, when you know that the salary you are receiving, Mr. Speaker, is not a salary for yourself alone, but it's a salary that you can use, you have to use for everyone within your constituency. It's a salary, Mr. Speaker, that even the people who condemn you ask for sometimes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we have to educate our people. Education must be key, and there must be education process within our constituency and within the entire country. Because, Mr. Speaker, sometimes you get letters from different organizations, and they ask you for $3,000 and $4,000, Mr. Speaker. And I believe, Mr. Speaker, that they believe that we get money from some other way, Mr. Speaker. The only money we get, Mr. Speaker, is the money that we receive as salary. Measles salary, Mr. Speaker. Small salary, 23 years, we have received the same salary. But when you listen and you read in social media, Mr. Speaker, you wonder. I believe social media has made us become a vicious people. And we attack everything without having the facts, Mr. Speaker. We attack the salaries, we say that parliamentarians are receiving some $10,000. I've never received it. I don't know if there's any parliamentarian here who have received that. I have never received anything than the salary that I get on a monthly basis. And Mr. Speaker, sometimes you hear and you listen to radio programs and they say, your name comes. Mr. Speaker, once I was there and I heard my name on Shaggy program where somebody said that they need to investigate me because I am involved with whoever, with whatever. Mr. Speaker, the only business I'm involved in is the business of the state of Grenada, Carriacou, and PD Martinique. I'm not involved in any other business. The only thing I'm interested in, Mr. Speaker, the only reason I'm here is because really, Mr. Speaker, I believe I can make a genuine contribution to serving the people of our beautiful tri-island state of Grenada, Carriacou, and PD Martinique. I believe I can make a genuine contribution of serving the people of St. Andrews Northwest. I'm not here for no other reason. That's the only reason I'm here. And I want to stress that I'm in no other business. I'm not involved with no other person. The only monies I receive is the monies that go to my salary, and I use it for every other purpose. Even the people, Mr. Speaker, who say, well, we should do this and we should do that, they too sometimes ask you for those monies. Mr. Speaker, you see, it's not reproach, but sometimes when you read those things that I said earlier on, it hurts. It hurts deep. Deep when you see who's writing and who's commenting on particular issues, when you know they should know better, when you know that you explain to them, Mr. Speaker, that I'm not receiving any other monies. All we do as parliamentarians is to balance our budget. Mr. Speaker, if we are to be getting any other monies, it means that we have to be doing wrong and out of place things, Mr. Speaker. And even the people, Mr. Speaker, who accuse you of being bubble and corrupt, these are the same people, Mr. Speaker, when they get a contract, they're calling you to offer you monies. I beg, Mr. Speaker, to say to them that we do not or will not be in any contractor or any worker or any individual within our trial and state pocket. Mr. Speaker, we are serving here because we want to serve our humanity. We do not want here because we want somebody to give us back some money or we want to be involved in any extra thing. We are here to serve and serve diligently, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg our people out there who are using social media, let us use social media in a positive way. Let us use it to uplift people. Let us use it to uplift humanity. Let us not use it to pull down. Those PAGs are useless. You cannot use those PAGs. So let's stop pulling her down, and let's stop pulling him down, because he doesn't do anything for us. That does bring us down also. So, Mr. Speaker, as we strive in 2019 to continue to serve our beautiful tri-island state, I ask every one of us, and I ask the nation to say a prayer for every one of us members of the team, but especially our women. Mr. Speaker.
Proceed, Madam.
Mr. Speaker, I also would want to, I think I lose my train of thought. Yeah, so Mr. Speaker, I call on the nation to pray for every one of us, especially, as I said, our women folks. Because, Mr. Speaker, I have seen in the last couple of days, Mr. Speaker, the stress and tension. Sometimes we keep quiet, but we speak among ourselves, and we comfort one another. And I've seen the level of tension by our female parliamentarians. And I decided, Mr. Speaker, that I must stand here this morning as the Minister with responsibility for gender and family affairs to speak up on the issue and to say to them that we are here to serve and we are here to stay. We will continue to work and we will continue to serve in our season. We will continue to do despite of the negative outside there, despite of the character assassination, despite of all the wrong things that has been said about us, Mr. Speaker. We will continue to do our best to stop this beautiful trial and state of Grenada CARICOM Martinique. We are committed to that cause, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Representative. For just before we move to the next speaker, I'd just like to make a statement. Thank you, Honorable Representative. And I did not give her extra time. In fact, I still owe her some time. I would use the time. Those that I collect, I would use it to make my presentation later. So she did not get any extra time. I'd just like to make a little announcement here. We want to take lunch at 12:30. But before we do that, I want us to remember that there are people who served in this house for many, many years. And I want to say here that our Honorable Prime Minister could be known as the father of the Parliament of this country, having served this country for 35 years in the Parliament. So we can say he's the father of the Parliament. And if there is a father, then we have to find a mother. Let me make sure that I read it right. So the mother of the Parliament has served for 19 years, 8 months, and 17 days so far. And God willing, on the 5th of February 2019, she will be celebrating her linen and silk anniversary as a member of this Parliament. So I want us to recognize a mother of the Parliament. And if you find me being extra generous to her today, it's for that purpose. I hope she don't force me too much. You have to treat the mother right. So my generosity to you today would be for today, but not too much. So thank you very much. Honorable Representative for St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me also take this opportunity to congratulate the Mother of the Parliament on her years of service, but also recognize, Mr. Speaker, your use of savings of time from one to make sure that it's distributed properly throughout the course of the day. And I think it is the very same principle that we all are going to be speaking to today, not squandering that saving of time at the first opportune moment. So, Mr. Speaker, I hope too that I can give you some savings in time as well that can be distributed fairly among all of the others. So let me start. Mr. Speaker, the health situation in Grenada continues to be dynamic as the ministry continues to implement activities aimed at achieving the strategic goals and objectives to improve the efficiency, the effectiveness of service delivery and quality care offered to the citizens of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. Mr. Speaker, in short, we continue to focus on patient care, the people. Despite the challenges, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health has been able to attain important milestones in collaboration with stakeholders to improve the quality and range of services offered to the people. Several initiatives have been taken which have enabled the strengthening of health systems across the sector. The Ministry acknowledges that while there are successes, we must be cognizant of the risks across the sector. We must work strategically to optimize the available health resources to continuously improve the quality of service offered. The following are key achievements, Mr. Speaker, of the Ministry of Health, Social Security, and International Business in relation to the priorities. I have outlined them for the fiscal year January to December 2018 in the following order. 1, leadership and governance. 2, institutional strengthening. 3, health infrastructural development. 4, health services delivery. 5, health financing. 6, medical products and technology. And 7, fostering and enabling a business environment. Mr. Speaker, on 1, leadership and governance. Leadership and governance in the health system guides the strategic policy frameworks which, along with the effective oversight, coalition building and regulation, serves to ensure accountability in service delivery. It is in this regard the Ministry notes the following accomplishments for the period commencing January 2018. Human Resource for Health, HRH. The Ministry gained approval and further endorsement from Cabinet for the implementation of the Human Resource for Health Policy and Action Plan and the establishment of a Health for Human Resources for Health. A planning committee comprising of representatives from within and outside of the public service has been established. This committee is expected to spearhead the implementation of HRH policies and institutionalize a comprehensive and holistic approach to strengthening and planning to ensure a health workforce that meets the needs of the sector. Through this initiative, the Ministry expects to develop a comprehensive framework, most importantly, Mr. Speaker, for succession planning, and to optimize the available staff for delivery of quality health care services to our citizens. Mr. Speaker, following that, a joint external evaluation for international health regulations has been initiated. The Ministry undertook, in collaboration with the Pan American Health Organization, a joint external evaluation of IHR capacity. This joint external evaluation is a voluntary assessment of Grenada's capacity to prevent, detect, and respond to public health risks which occur naturally or due to deliberate or accidental events. This will be commencing on November 27th, this month, and the Ministry will lead the country in a self-assessment spearheaded by international experts from WHO and PAHO, who will work with Grenada's IHR team to evaluate 19 technical areas inclusive of reporting, surveillance, food safety, zoonotic diseases, antimicrobial resistance, emergency preparedness, ports of entry, biosafety, biosecurity, medical, countermeasures, chemical events, laboratory networks, etc. Mr. Speaker, what is of noteworthy is that we will be one of the first in the OECS to initiate this exercise. Mr. Speaker, the Baby Friendly Hospital Initiative. needs a further explanation. Ministry, in collaboration with Pan American Health Organization, has committed to ensuring that the General Hospital and all of our medical facilities are certified as being baby-friendly. That means a baby-friendly institution or the initiative is a worldwide program under the auspices of WHO and UNICEF to promote breastfeeding in particular. So, i.e., what we are saying is that if we are promoting it, we must ensure that within the very facilities that nursing mothers or mothers with children of the nursing age are going to be visiting for various reasons because we are encouraging them to come, that we must have the proper accommodations there to allow them to breastfeed while they are at our various medical facilities. So that explains the baby-friendly initiative, Mr. Speaker, that we are embarked upon. But, Mr. Speaker, I will come back to it later on as to where the money is going to be coming from for that initiative and what is at risk. Mr. Speaker, regulations and legislation. Grenada Allied Health Council and the Grenada Medical and Dental Council continue to enforce the legislation requiring the registration of medical professionals, working in close collaboration with the Grenada National Accreditation Board and other key stakeholders to ensure that due diligence with respect to the registration of professionals in practice in Grenada is upheld. The Ministry notes in particular the work of the Allied Health Professional Council, which was appointed in 2016 and is working diligently to educate and encourage the registration of allied health professionals in many disciplines covered by the Allied Health Professional Act. From hairdressers all the way to tattoo artists are covered within this act. And therefore, we must ensure that each and every individual maintains a certain health standard, minimum at least health standard, and that we have the tools necessary to certify them as being qualified. Mr. Speaker, but what is the work of the Grenada Pharmacy Council and the Nurses and Midwives Council is also worthy of being noted. Despite the challenges that these bodies face in carrying out their mandate, each is committed to ensuring that the practice of pharmacy and nursing in Grenada is conducted in a manner that safeguards the individual, both the individual practicing and the individual receiving the service. Mr. Speaker, the Pharmacy Council is the body responsible for registration and licensing of pharmacists, pharmacies, and importers and distributors of pharmaceutical products, and is charged with the responsibility to ensure that the standards for sale and management of pharmaceuticals are maintained and to ensure the safety of the public in the use of pharmaceutical products. The Pharmacy Council notes a marginal increase of 5% in the number of registered pharmacists in Grenada, while the number of importers and distributors has increased by 55% from 5 to 11 in 2018 when compared to 2017. Cognizant of our responsibilities to safeguard the public, the Ministry has received approval for the appointment of an additional pharmacy inspector during the 2019 fiscal year to ensure the timely and thorough inspection of pharmacies to effectively regulate and promote the best practice. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to comment here that while the Ministry of Health is encouraging, incentivizing, and pushing all of these councils to perform, there are certain responsibilities or obligations that need to be met by the ministry. One in particular is that each and every one of these councils, each and every one of these entities must have an office and a secretariat to perform. And I put forward to each and every one of them, Mr. Speaker, that we need to look at a joint secretariat for all. That we need to look at it in the same way that we have the efficiencies within the Ministry of Health. That the chief medical officer, who relates to the doctors and dentists, is right next door to the chief nursing officer, who deals with all of our nurses. and that the secretarial services are pooled together. Although in some instances, the responsibility of either of those entities, individuals, is in safeguarding one group and making sure that the other does not take advantage of, i.e. that there may be conflicts of interest. And that is why there are two separate individuals safeguarding that from a ministry standpoint. And that I ask that the various associations, the Medical and Dental, and the Nursing Council, and the Pharmacy Council, consider seriously a pooling of resources so that the ministry can meet all of the responsibilities, and that they have shared resources in one common secretariat. While I, and I'm sure they, would like to have their separate offices, we need to crawl before we can walk. We need to make sure that those entities are properly staffed, properly supported, and therefore need to consider a joint secretariat. Mr. Speaker, alcohol regulation. My ministry in 2018 facilitated the passage of legislation in this very House to commence blood alcohol testing. This signifies an ongoing collaboration with the Ministry of Health with key stakeholders on the importance of a whole-of-government approach, or as we say, health in all policies. The use of alcohol as a major contributor to traffic accidents and the impact on the health sector is well documented and not challenged. Through this legislation, the Ministry of Health has established framework which is being implemented by the Royal Grenada Police Force. This continues a collaboration between RGPF and the Ministry of Health that has previously facilitated other public awareness initiatives, road signs, bumper stickers, throughout the annual celebration of the WHO PAHO Road Safety Week. But, Mr. Speaker, the legislation has been passed, and therefore the equipment and tools necessary for the enforcement need to be obtained. And those tools and equipment to be obtained can either be one, to say we have one, or as many as possible. And those come, in most cases, from donor agencies. We will put aside a certain amount of capital investment, as it is called, to make sure that we have the minimum. What I'm getting at, Mr. Speaker, is that our ability to have as many of those tools of enforcement as possible is dependent on us having proper fiscal management and savings in time, savings in financial resources, in order to allocate where we can do with more and not just the minimum. Mr. Speaker, institutional strengthening. Our ministry continues to enhance the capacity of health professionals through in-service capacity building programs, and thereby strengthening the knowledge and skills across the health sector to provide quality services and enhance the continuity and sustainability of the health sector. Technical assistance and support from PAHO on the biannual work program is one example. The ministry in 2018 continued a collaboration with Pan American Health Organization to build the capacity of healthcare professionals and to support health system strengthening through the review and update of various protocols and procedures to optimize the program delivery and quality of care to our citizens. In this regard, Mr. Speaker, approximately 200,000 EC dollars has been invested in technical assistance and support activities in the health sector. In excess of 300 health sector stakeholders, both private and public, participated in various training workshops in Grenada, including mortality and morbidity coding and strengthening of data collection, tuberculosis management through updating of TB treatment, the TB treatment manual, food safety risk management, sensitization of training of private sector organizations and individuals on the requirements of the Food Safety Act, emergency care and treatment and mass casualty management, the enhancement there of national capacity working with the Red Cross, NADMA, and health sector workers, St. John's Ambulance Brigade, and our private sector entities like St. Augustine Medical, to respond to various emergencies. Psychological first aid, Mr. Speaker, a new term I'm introducing here into the House. How to provide support to people affected by a disaster or trauma. That too. Mr. Speaker, health and infrastructure development. In keeping with the stated objectives of infrastructure development and modernization of the health sector, the Ministry of Health has collaborated with donor agencies to support continued investment in health infrastructure, and in this regard, the following are worthy of note. Smart healthcare facilities in the Eastern Caribbean, Project Phase 2. Mr. Speaker, this project, funded by the Department of International Development, DFID, and implemented by PAHO, has begun the institutionalization of climate-resilient building techniques into the local health sector. Through this project, Mr. Speaker, Princess Alice has been retrofitted as a smart healthcare facility. Design work is ongoing to begin retrofit work at Princess Royal Hospital and Hillsborough Health Center in Carriacou, the Central Medical Stores building in Mount Gay, and the Richmond Home for the Elderly as well. To date, approximately $1.3 million US has been spent on the design and retrofit works for facilities. And Mr. Speaker, Princess Alice, which was officially signed off on by POW and handed over to us in the last couple of weeks, is the first in the OECS to be certified as smart. Mr. Speaker, Climate Change and Health meeting was held in Grenada October 16th and 17th. Government's commitment to addressing concerns and ensuring a comprehensive national framework to prepare and respond to the threats of climate change, and more so in the health sector, was demonstrated by the decision to host the 3rd Global Conference on Climate Change and Health. And this initiative, spearheaded by the WHO, aims to ensure that the health sector of small island developing states are resilient to climate variabilities and climate change. Mr. Speaker, this conference was attended by ministers of health and ministers of the environment from the Caribbean and other small island developing states from as far as the Seychelles and Mauritius, as well as senior members of the WHO from Geneva and Pan American Health Organization, as well and in particular representatives from the various donor agencies. The World Bank, the Green Climate Fund, etc., were all here discussing. What came out of that meeting is a global action plan on climate change, which was handed back to us now, as to how we are to plan and react to not the inevitable, but what is upon us now of climate change. Mr. Speaker, events like Zika, events like chikungunya, events like hurricane that destroys our health infrastructure are part of that action plan that we have to take into consideration, that not just building facilities, but ensuring that the facilities that we build last, and not just implementing systems, but implementing systems that will, if possible, take into consideration the unknowns that will continue to show from climate change, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, our ability to react to any of those unforeseen events, our ability to have a buffer to deal with any of those unforeseen events. And I take, for example, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, none of the Caribbean countries, no one in the region contemplated Zika and chikungunya, which is as a direct result of climate change. But if we continue to ignore the fact that these events are going to be more and more frequent and quite possibly more and more traumatic, and do not take into consideration that we must put aside for a rainy day, that we cannot just simply, as soon as we have a windfall, give it away, that we have to ensure that there is a fund that will take us through rainy days or increased rainy days, Mr. Speaker. And this is why, in certain instances, we have to look at the bigger picture as a collective government. Mr. Speaker, the 11th EDF, European Development Fund. That is budgetary support. Mr. Speaker, that is budgetary support given to us not because the Europeans want to simply give away their windfall. It is given to us because we have shown a certain amount of fiscal discipline. It is given to us because we have cooperated with them in terms of making sure that we have implemented certain policies and procedures, that they can say to us, we are no longer just giving you project financing, that this project will be done their way and will come to their cost, but they are willing to give us budgetary support now that says, I will help subsidize your budget because I believe and I am seeing that the way you are managing your budget, you will manage my money well in the same way. So, Mr. Speaker, very important. If we are to take the first set of budgetary savings or the first success in budgetary management and give it away to the first person who knocks on the door, we will not continue with the successes that we are enjoying. And in particular, I want to draw a direct line to healthcare, an issue that is on everybody's mind, and an issue that affects any and everybody in this country, whether you are a politician, private sector, trade unionist, opposition, rich or poor. You will have to and need as strong and as resilient a health system as possible in your country, regardless of your level of pension, regardless of your salary increase, regardless of everything else in life. You need a strong and resilient health system. So, Mr. Speaker, coming out of the EDF is our Gove St. John St. Mark's Polyclinic. We broke ground on the much awaited. I came to this house numerous times saying that we would be breaking ground. I am now coming to this house to say that we have broken ground. And that I look forward to my colleagues from St. John and St. Mark's keeping an eye on the development that goes on with that polyclinic to ensure that it becomes very quickly the flagship in our primary health care, the flagship facility, and very quickly serves the people of St. John's, St. Mark's, and St. Patrick's, a much-needed upgrade. Well, Mr. Speaker, that has been budgeted for, and the monies for that has been allocated. But, Mr. Speaker, when we complete the construction of that facility, between now and then, I believe my responsibility and the responsibility of my colleague in the Ministry of Implementation is to find savings as much as possible in that construction. Savings in time and how long it takes, and savings in dollars, how much it costs, so that we can use those savings to put additional equipment into that facility that we may not have budgeted for in 2019 or at the end of construction, but that because of those savings we can put the additional equipment there to serve all of the people of that area. So the same theme, Mr. Speaker, while we are talking about how we have spent and what we will be spending, we expect to be working hard to save, to utilize those savings efficiently and effectively. Mr. Speaker, that facility is 16,019 square feet structure. It is a reconstruction on a new location of the Gove Health Center. It is going to be expanded so that it will serve the entire community. This facility is expected to be completed in the first quarter of 2020, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the second phase of the General Hospital. General Hospital work commenced on September 2018 on the retrofitting of the old Duncan ward. That is the last phase. The Duncan ward is being retrofitted to be a temporary kitchen so that we can demolish the existing kitchen to create that connecting corridor. Mr. Speaker, it's been a long journey, and in my opinion, longer than it should have been. My colleague from St. Mark's will agree as well, because that facility should have started, the phase 2 that is, should have started construction way before 2013. Certain individuals purposely ignored it and did not focus on serving the people and developing what was needed, i.e. improvement in our general hospital in that phase 2. They left a steel structure there for many years, Mr. Speaker. So, while I'm being honest to say that they left that structure there, and thanks to my colleague from St. Mark's, during her tenure, she took the initiative to make sure that it started. We also have to be honest with ourselves and say that we took that initiative in 2013, and we are going to say to the public that it will be completed. It has taken longer than we would have liked to have seen to under our watch, but it will be completed. It will be completed to deliver to the people what is best needed. And again, Mr. Speaker, at the risk of sounding extremely repetitive, we are looking for savings there too so that we can increase the level of services being offered to the people by that facility, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, immediately after completion of that facility, I intend to focus on Rathdoon. The completion of the second phase, once that is completed, we are going to be working on Rathdoon, which is the building where the present casualty is. Rathdoon was supposed to focus on mental health at our general hospital. That facility was relocated in 2004, I believe, or 2003, temporarily relocated to Mount Gay. It is absolutely necessary that we embark on that. I will not fall under the typical risk of ignoring mental health in Grenada. We have built and almost complete a beautiful phase 2 of a general hospital for casualty, labs, etc. We now need to focus and give attention to mental health. Mr. Speaker, this will augur well for a renewed emphasis on the provision of a comprehensive mental health service across the state, and mandates the review and update of targeted implementation of legislation and regulation policies and procedures which guide and deliver mental health services, both the prevention and the treatment. Mr. Speaker, in this regard, the Ministry intends to work assiduously with key stakeholders to enact updated mental health legislation. It also anticipates the strengthening of community-based treatment and prevention and treatment programs, including the adoption of a draft suicide prevention program and plan, which is currently being developed with the assistance of the Pan American Health Organization. Mr. Speaker, again, just to take note of Rathdoon, I will come back to that later in my final paragraph. Mr. Speaker, electronic medical records. The Ministry continues to expand and upgrade the IT infrastructure to ensure ready access of patient information and safe and controlled access of patient information. We have already rolled out the electronic medical record system in most of our community health centers and are now beginning the implementation at our general hospital, which will allow the transfer of information, which will allow, Mr. Speaker, access to information by the public as well as healthcare professionals. Mr. Speaker, electronic medical records also will be working hand in hand with an electronic immunization registry and a perinatal information system. And most importantly, Mr. Speaker, most importantly, an inventory management system, centralized at central medical stores and rolling out into all of our healthcare facilities. Mr. Speaker, the importance of that is, one, the efficient ordering and maintenance of inventory, but two, the control to prevent the wastages and leakages within the healthcare system of pharmaceutical and medical products. Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to say any more, but I think we all know what we're speaking about there, for fear that there's further action or reaction from any implied statement there, but that we do need to control, like any other entity, the efficient management of stores and stock in trade, i.e. pharmaceutical and medical equipment. Mr. Speaker, health service delivery improvements. The Ministry of Health is the primary provider of health services in the Tri-Island state and strives to optimize available resources to offer the best quality of care to clients through collaboration, again, with Pan American Health Organization and other stakeholders. The Ministry continues to assess service deliverable mechanisms and strengthen local capacity. Mr. Speaker, notwithstanding, there are challenges. However, the staff of the Ministry of Health are committed to working together to ensure the best quality of care is available to all of our citizens, Mr. Speaker. Primary healthcare services, maternal and child healthcare services continue to be the most requested and managed primary healthcare service available to citizens. The immunization program continues to demonstrate strong compliance to the immunization schedule, with greater than 90% of our children receiving vaccines as per schedule. But, Mr. Speaker, there is, however, some instances of non-compliance which the Ministry will monitor and address. There must be compliance with respect to immunization on communicable diseases, Mr. Speaker. Chronic non-communicable diseases continues to be the leading cause of morbidity and mortality in Grenada. And across the state, services remain available to the public at all medical stations and health centers, which continue to be the first point of access for care to the vast majority of citizens, Mr. Speaker. In 2017 and into 2018, with the support of PAHO, we began the implementation of what is referred to as the Stanford Chronic Disease Self-Management Program. The program targets adults with chronic disease and aims to build the confidence of participants in managing their health and keeps them active and engaged in their own lives. Mr. Speaker, it teaches techniques to address physical and psychological effects of chronic diseases, including fatigue, pain, depression, and frustration, exercise and proper nutrition, and appropriate use of medications, and how to communicate effectively on the use of these medications, and with the family and friends and health professionals. The Ministry recently partnered with RGPF, Royal Grenada Police Force, among other community groups, to implement a series of that chronic disease self-management program workshops, and reports indicate that this was extremely successful, particularly for the officers of our Royal Grenada Police Force. What was noticed in the beginning is that quite a lot of our officers were at high risk for chronic non-communicable diseases, and that there was need to, and that because we can look at them as one group, we can measure the improvements of the intervention there. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry continues to strengthen cervical cancer prevention program. Following the reintroduction of VIA, or visual inspection of acetic acid, the program in 2017, the Ministry has undertaken a thorough, expanded program on immunization and the introduction of a voluntary HPV vaccination in 2018, and will continue its public awareness and public education program in this regard into 2019. Mr. Speaker, we had, again, a second visit of ARCPEACE. facilitated by the Embassy of the People's Republic of China, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Ministry of Health. Again, significantly successful. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say not just was it successful in terms of the 7,000 plus Grenadians that were seen this time, the various procedures, operations, etc., and the building of closer bonds and trust between us and the people of the People's Republic of China, but also that it was very timely. When that foreign nation, that foreign ship was here in Grenada, providing services to the people of Grenada free for that week, coincidentally, some of our healthcare workers were on stress break. So we are fortunate to have had the visit of that vessel, to have facilitated that stress break, or allowed that stress break not to have affected the public as much as it could have without the presence of that ship. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm saying that to say simply that we all, regardless of our differences, regardless of our roles, need to make sure that in our differences and in our disagreements, that the very people we're supposed to be serving don't suffer. If I have, or the healthcare providers have an issue with policies and procedures or comments of this government, that is their right, and I respect that. And they need to enforce their rights and demand of us a change of policy, a further explanation, or sit down and discussion. And our policies also need to take into consideration all involved. But none of us has the right to allow our differences to affect the most vulnerable that we are supposed to serve. Especially and in particular in a sector that is defined as essential. Especially and in particular in a sector that is defined as essential, Mr. Speaker. Because we are essential service providers does not mean that we won't have differences. Mr. Speaker, hospital services. The Ministry notes that there are many challenges across the hospital service, Mr. Speaker, but it is committed to developing creative and innovative solutions to ensure that care is available when needed. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry in 2018 initiated a series of initiatives to support and improve the management of hospital services. A customer satisfaction survey was piloted in obstetrics and gynecological departments to assess the gaps in service delivery and to identify mechanisms to attain the goals of quality of service based on patient-centered care. In this regard, the Ministry has noted the importance of and reinstituted the issuing of staff IDs so that patients or clients can readily identify the staff within our institutions, and so to better understand how to interact with staff and whom they are likely to encounter, whether as a patient, family member, or otherwise. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry intends in 2019 to begin development and implementation of a comprehensive quality assurance program across the health sector and critical to the sustainable National Health Insurance Program. Support for procurement of supplies and equipment with the assessment of a procurement officer, assignment of a procurement officer at the General Hospital. This initiative is intended to foster greater dialogue and collaboration between the various stakeholders established, Mr. Speaker. It also aims to optimize value for money in the procurement of goods and services for hospital operations. Savings again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, through this process, the Ministry aims to establish partnership with suppliers and to establish a robust inventory management system, as I've mentioned before, to minimize risk to patient care and service deliverables related to unavailability of supplies and downtime due to unplanned maintenance or malfunctioning of equipment. Mr. Speaker, and the recruitment of a new Director of Hospital Services, a daughter of the soil, Dr. Carol McIntosh, is very much into her role now and working with all involved at our various healthcare facilities, our 3 hospitals, and the staff as well, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, through the hospital services, the Ministry of Health continued to provide routine secondary services at Princess Alice Hospital, Princess Royal, and with additional specialist services at the General Hospital. Such additional specialty services or special services are oncology and soon to be implemented within our hospital confines, dialysis as well, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry has been able to recruit a new complement of specialist doctors through collaboration with Cuba. And 2 Grenadian specialist doctors have returned to the system following specialty training in Cuba. We anticipate that during the first quarter of 2019, there will be a full complement of doctors at Princess Royal Hospital in Carriacou. And we trust that we can sustain and ensure that the healthcare needs of the residents of Carriacou and Petit Martinique are met. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry, with the approval of Cabinet, is committed and continues its commitment to the regularization of nurses and their appointment to the public service. The Ministry continues to dialogue with key stakeholders to address other issues related to staffing, particularly in hospital services as it relates to nursing assistants, orderlies, and support staff. Mr. Speaker, I would like to go to our Minister of Finance in the middle of 2019 to say, based on savings, we would like to, on contract, bring in some additional service providers. But, Mr. Speaker, if he gives it away on a loan on pension, I cannot utilize it to improve the service being offered in our healthcare. So I stand with him on the decision, the collective decision, that the savings must be shared throughout all. As I'd like to say, we must spread the love evenly. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to update on the ongoing partnership with SGU and the training of our nurses, Bachelors of Science program. Bachelors of Science program, Mr. Speaker, not just simply training of nurses. Mr. Speaker, the first cohort of nurses with a Bachelor's of Science degree will be graduating in the month of November. The first cohort. Mr. Speaker, there are 3 others behind. I would like to increase the number of scholarships being offered to our young Grenadian men and women to pursue degrees, Bachelors of Science degrees in nursing. I cannot get that resource unless we utilize the very savings that we are now seeing through proper fiscal management, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, specialist services. The Ministry, in collaboration with hospital management and other partners, continues to make available a range of specialist services, Mr. Speaker. Worthy of mention in 2018, Mr. Speaker, our ongoing partnership with CHORS and the World Pediatric Program in providing specialist care to our children in Grenada, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, most significantly, in partnership with CHORS, there is now a telemedicine facility at the General Hospital, Mr. Speaker. We have been using it. Our pediatric doctors and other doctors are examining patients at the General Hospital, and at the same time, specialists in the United States are looking at the very same results and coaching, counseling, and adding their input These specialists who previously we would only be able to get their services when they physically visited Grenada are now staying at the same time through the telemedicine services, seeing the same images, seeing the same results, and discussing as though they were in the room with our doctors and Mr. Speaker. So I really want to thank CHORS for that contribution. In their minds, it is a small contribution with respect to equipment, but in terms of the effects for us all, as a people, it is immeasurable, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we started peritoneal dialysis program and now have 2 persons are successfully receiving that consistent treatment of peritoneal dialysis. Mr. Speaker, we have embarked on what is called end-stage renal disease or permanent fistula, which is a tube that is inserted permanently to allow the individuals to receive that treatment, thanks to cooperation with a foundation called the HERO Foundation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 7 persons this year received that procedure free of charge from HERO. They came down with their surgeons and did that facility, provided that service, Mr. Speaker, and more in 2019. The Ministry is also exploring, through a PPP, a comprehensive dialysis program that will commence in 2019. We're finalizing on the space now. We have had numerous meetings with respect to the charges and expect a significant reduction in the charge to the public for dialysis services, as well as the quality and quantity of dialysis services that can be provided to the Grenadian public at large, because there will now be 2 service providers. So, Speaker, access to radiology services through an MOU with the Caribbean Radiology Center based in Antigua, as well as dialogue and cooperation with our new members in the OECS, which is Martinique, who have much improved healthcare facilities, and we are working together with them to find other ways of cooperation to add to what currently exists with respect to the yeoman service that the government and people of Cuba provide for our cancer patients. And now we have the agreement with Caribbean Radiology, and also looking at having an agreement with Martinique and the French Islands. Mr. Speaker, a couple of weeks ago at our obstetrics ward, there was a birth, young baby, young innocent baby, that was born with what is referred to as gastroenteritis, which for the rest of us, myself included, who are not medical doctors, means that the child was born with the intestines on the outside. An extremely difficult and complicated occurrence, and a procedure on a newborn baby that cannot be conducted in most of the Caribbean islands. We reached out to a specialist in Barbados and Trinidad, and both responded saying that they could not deal with it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, through previous relationships with a doctor called Dr. Jose Tristan, who was here assisting us with our Zika implementation, but he is a pediatric surgeon. That individual flew to Grenada, performed the procedure. Before flying to Grenada, the week before, gave instructions to our doctors how to stabilize that child. In the days after being born, flew to Grenada, provided the procedure, saved that child's life, now stable and proceeding. Mr. Speaker, we are in discussions. We are in discussions now to find our way with our existing partners to have Dr. Tristan permanently based in Grenada, to offer the services not just to the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, but to the people of the OECS. But Mr. Speaker, this one came without our expectation and that offer, and therefore we will find a way to have him come, or we will find that way in the savings. Mr. Speaker, yes, we expect a lot of savings. Mr. Speaker, health financing. The Ministry continues to be committed to the mobilization and allocation of optimum resources and utilization of available financial resources to individually and collectively meet the health needs of the people of Grenada. We are committed to a universal health coverage, that everyone should be able to access every type of service being offered, regardless of your level of income. This is why we are moving steadfastly with the national health insurance. The preparatory work has been done with the University of the West Indies, UNDP, as well. And from their guidance, the documents required have been provided to establish a sustainable national health insurance program. We received that from them, and also the basket of services or variations in the basket of services already. We now, through a committee with the Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Health, as well as UWI, need to fine-tune for a decision that I expect can be implemented in 2019. Mr. Speaker, national health accounts have been finalized with the oversight of WHO. Mr. Speaker, further to donor financing, I want to say that the work of the Ministry of Health has been supported with the assistance of various donors, in particular and worthy of mention out of the numerous, the Maria Holder Memorial Trust, our very own National Lottery Authority, St. George's University, Grenlec, UNDP, and UK Aid, to mention a few. Mr. Speaker, and also, and in particular, the numerous individuals in our diaspora who, either as individuals or with their associations that they have formed, that all, or most cases, if not in every case, their association has the name Grenada in it, or Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique, i.e. there are interest groups of Grenadians living there, family of Grenadians who are raising funds and assisting us. So I want to thank them and mention them as well in part for their contributions to date. Mr. Speaker, emergency response systems. Through the same Maria Holder Foundation Memorial Trust, the Ministry received 1 ambulance from them and other medical equipment for pediatric services at the General Hospital. We received 2 ambulances that were donated through National Lottery, our very own National Lottery. And in addition, with funds from SGU, Grenlec, and the Government of Grenada, received an additional 2 ambulances there, a total of 5 new ambulances this year. We are in receipt of these ambulances. They are in the possession of the Ministry of Health. They will be delivered to the 3 significant health facilities, i.e. General Hospital, Princess Alice, and Princess Royal, as well as St. David's Gore Health Center in the next week. The delay is in the proper branding, but in particular, the training, defensive driving training, and reinforcement for those who will be using those ambulances. So not just handing them over, but make sure that we upgrade those who will be using them, and we make sure that the proper training is there, not just for the drivers, but also for the nurses and orderlies, so that when we roll them out in a week's time, they will have the maximum effect and benefit to the people of Grenada. Mr. Speaker, I am looking forward to in 2019 on receiving from the World Bank approximately $2 million that will be used to upgrade St. David's, to upgrade Rathdoon, to upgrade St. Patrick's, and to upgrade Grand Anne's health facilities. This is coming as a very soft loan, about 1%, I believe, 1.5%. We expect a disbursement. We are basically guaranteed the disbursement in August to September of 2019. Individuals from the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Health are going to Washington in the next week to finalize that arrangement in terms of the dollar value. And there is a possibility, as I have mentioned to them, and we are all aware of it, that is those of us in the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Health, that we can up that figure a little more. However, if we do not maintain our fiscal responsibility between now and then, that $2 million US is gone. It is only available to us because we have maintained the rules and regulations set forth. So the St. David's Health Center, the Grand Anne's Health Center, Rathdoon is not as important to the people of Grenada? Do we not deserve that first? Or can't we not find a compromise on both? That some can get some, and facilities can also be upgraded? Or should we listen to the loudest voice and give all to those who make the most noise? Do we blindly give them now and then suffer the people in 2019? Who may be some of them that live in the very St. David's, Grand Anne's area, may have families that need to access Rathdoon, may have families that need to go to one of those healthcare facilities. We need to look at the bigger picture, Mr. Speaker. We need to look at the bigger picture. I do not think history would forgive us if we deprive the people of Grenada that opportunity for the improvement of healthcare facilities. So, Mr. Speaker, before I move into, in fact, no, I will ask now, because I believe I am approaching the time, I will ask now for some additional time at your discretion, Mr. Speaker. I believe I am into the 3 minutes, or fastly approaching that, but I will ask for another 5 or 10 at your discretion.
After you have utilized your hour, I said before, I'm being extremely generous today.
I appreciate your generosity.
I still give you 15 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we hosted the OECS health ministers here in Grenada at the same time as what I had mentioned with the health and environment meeting, also for our PPS, of which Grenada was the chair, and we handed over chairmanship to Anguilla in October as well, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, National Insurance Scheme, or NIS. I too don't like the word scheme, so NIS. Mr. Speaker, in most cases, previous ministers of health and social services have not had a need to spend much time or discussion on NIS. Because, and I think that is one of the best things we can say about our NIS, that it has been operating independently and efficiently and effectively almost since its inception. But I want to take this opportunity to say a couple things. One, that I want to commend the management of NIS in their ability to have worked with and made the necessary changes to work with us on the implementation of national health insurance. We as a group, as a cabinet, through the advice of the committee set up, said that the NIS was the best custodian for national health insurance. And by all indications, based on the performance to date, that decision was correct. And the other thing I want to mention, Mr. Speaker, simply on NIS, is that we mark a transition in NIS at the end of this year. Mr. Alfred Logie has been providing yeoman service, steering that ship, and he will be moving on. Retirement, and NIS is in the process of, and the board will be informing me shortly of their choice in the new director. Mr. Speaker, it appears I'm almost on time with you. Mr. Speaker, as we proceed, assuming that I can rely on your generosity, for 2019, various strategic areas that we will be focusing on. Continued development in health infrastructure, cognizant of the needs of the citizens with respect to public health and universal health coverage, Mr. Speaker. Also with climate change. Mr. Speaker, targeted intervention to improve customer service and quality assurance. Patient focused, Mr. Speaker. Development of sustainable initiatives to address human resources for health, including, and most importantly, succession planning. Mr. Speaker, strengthening of the e-health, electronic health infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, I believe that because we are a developing nation with limited resources, that is why we must be focusing more on electronic methods. Be they electronic methods, as I've mentioned, with respect to telemedicine. Be they electronic methods with respect to electronic medical records, with proper inventory systems and inventory management. So, Mr. Speaker, we will be focusing significantly on all of those areas, Mr. Speaker, as we proceed into 2019. Mr. Speaker, we will also be updating legislative framework for the delivery of healthcare services, including mental health services and the sale of tobacco products. I've already mentioned in this House, but I expect to, within the early agenda of this House, to be bringing tobacco legislation, a bill here, as well as pursuing with our key partners, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sustainable initiatives for the management of cemeteries is also to be put forward for final approval. In principle, Cabinet has approved, and I'm looking forward to coming forward with final approval on that from Cabinet, which will involve public-private partnerships on the management of our cemeteries. Mr. Speaker, contracting of litter wardens. We have seen the ongoing implementation of traffic wardens, and I look keenly at that so that we can implement, using that same model, litter wardens. However, Mr. Speaker, again, it depends on financial management and the ability of a government through unforeseen areas or savings to do that, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, let me quickly, before I sum up, I want to express my sincere appreciation, in particular, to the people of South St. George who have put me here in this House. I'm fortunate enough or privileged enough to speak today on healthcare because that is where the Prime Minister has asked me to pay special attention in the ministry. But in this House, I am here because of the people. And just simply to sum up, because today's sitting is on the budget. I've spent most of my time speaking on the budget of healthcare, which is important to all, including the people of South St. George. but to say within the last year and between now and the end of the year, the collected information of work we have done. In Belmont, 45 by 5 feet of drains, concrete box drains in Montooth, in Woburn, slipper drains, in Fenton Village, box drains, in Montooth again, additional box drains, in Lansapine, box drains, in Montrouge, box drains, Greystone, box drains, and yes, in Frequenté, box drains. Mr. Speaker, yes, purposely, I have focused on drainage in the South in the last half of this year. Because many times I see that in the past we have built roads without the proper drainage and then have to go readdress. So I focus almost the entire budget and asked the ministry to collaborate with me as well, that we work on drainage. So I say this to explain to some of the individuals within the South who have been looking for roads, that with the proper drainage now, 2019, we can embark on roads that will last, that will not be washed away. Mr. Speaker, the people of Montooth are soon to experience the opening of their community center, which was built many years ago. That project started through assistance from the government and people of Venezuela. But that facility will be opened with a computer lab in the next week or two that will serve the people. In fact, I will ask to be excused after my presentation here to go meet with some of the service providers to make sure that the bandwidth and the quality of internet that is provided to that facility is of the highest level. We will also be at that facility starting Taekwondo being offered to members of the public in two forms. Those who can pay will pay, but the community who cannot afford to pay will participate as well. And I want to mention the individual who is offering that service free of charge to the community of Montooth and the wider surroundings, and that is Miss Andrea St. Bernard, a daughter of the soil as well, who was returned here doing other business, who has represented Grenada at the Olympics in Taekwondo, and has come back now to offer that service to the community, and is willing to offer it in other areas. I have given her a facility to use, and she is giving back without any demands. Mr. Speaker, I've collected data from my other ministries with respect to other services offered in the South. In the South, through housing, newly constructed houses in the last 6 months of this year, 7 houses repaired, 8 houses currently being constructed or repaired, 7. Mr. Speaker, loans being given through housing assistance as well. Total amount of loans, 29. Total grants for needy individuals, 10. Total loans plus grants, $18,000 in the South through, and I want to thank the Ministry of Housing and Social Services for that. We act as facilitators in identifying people, or so they also identify, and collectively, those are the amounts that have been served. Batch 6, Imanis, 34. Empower enrollment, 33. Involvement in the youth activities at Youth Expo, Health Walk, and I want to mention in particular the Batch 6 Imanis who participated in the cleanup of Montooth area for themselves. But importantly, sense of social well-being, but cleaned it up, insisted that the Ministry of Health put a sign saying no dumping there by order of the Ministry of Health. And have informed me, and I've been looking and seeing that it is happening. They are the self-enforcers there now to make sure that no one in the community dumps garbage there. And it's been a couple of weeks and nothing has been dumped there. They are enforcing it. I want to congratulate them, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me turn back to the ministry now and thank the individuals who have worked tirelessly. Let me start with my PS, Ms. Pauline Peters, the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. George Mitchell, Dr. Kester Dragon, who's Medical Director, Dr. Carol McIntosh, Dr. Francis Martin, Ms. Camille St. Louis, who's our planning officer, who worked with the PS tirelessly to help me put today's presentation together, and all of the things that we talked about there as well. Our Chief Nursing Officer, Nesta Edwards. all of the staff in the Ministry of Health, Social Services, and International Business, Social Security and International Business, Mr. Speaker, providing yeoman service that allows me to come here today to speak about the work they've done. Our external partners, Pan American Health Organization and St. George's University in particular. And when I speak of Pan American Health Organization, I need to mention in this House, Mr. Speaker, in particular contributions from Dr. Etienne and Dr. Shreb, who have been there for us. Dr. Etienne, who has been there for us as a Caribbean people, and Dr. Shreb, who has been there for us as OECS, sitting in Barbados office. Mr. Speaker, having said that, thanked everyone, I just want to sum up and digress on one point, Mr. Speaker, and the point that seems to be an issue of discussion right now. Mr. Speaker, the point of, as I would say, as a government, we took a moral, Mr. Speaker, a moral and ethical stand that we would ensure that public workers receive salaries, receive salary increases that were negotiated, and should receive pensions. And we took that stand on a moral and ethical grounds, Mr. Speaker. We still maintain those same moral and ethical standards. When we say that we understand the need or desire, having had your salaries guaranteed and your increase in salary guaranteed and your pension after retirement guaranteed by the government, that there would be a desire to have a lump sum on the date of retirement. Everything else is guaranteed, but a lump sum on the date of retirement. But the same moral and ethical grounds in which we stood to guarantee the salaries, the increases, and the pension does not allow us to give it all away on that lump sum. The bigger picture is the salaries, the increases, and the pension guarantee. The lump sum is there. Some may use it to part pay or pay a loan. Some may use it to travel. Some may use it to make improvements on their house. Some may buy a car. Some may help fund the university of their children. Some may drink it away, because it's all different levels. But what is guaranteed? Well, each individual will use that lump sum as they so choose fit. What is guaranteed is that each individual will be more dependent on an assurance of that pension continuing and the level of that pension. That should be more important to all than that lump sum. And also, that each and every one of those individuals will be living in the state of Grenada, receiving that pension, will have their children continue to access schools, and want us to achieve the goal of 1 laptop per child, or as many computers in our schools, better facilities of those schools, newer schools, maybe a school bus system. Within health, improvements at least in the short term on the healthcare facilities, and not give it away completely. And in this instance, not redirect money for healthcare into that lump sum, Jeopardize money that would come to healthcare separately because of us insisting on that lump sum from somewhere else. Mr. Speaker, I will end by saying that I've made clear my feelings with respect to what we should be doing with savings, what we should be doing with windfalls, if you want to phrase it, but the benefits of the pain that we have all gone through as one people most recently. But I want to say that history has shown us We mark certain days. Bloody Monday, bloody this or bloody that. One thing that is significant that affects us the most, that we find unforgiving in those instances, is when children were used to send a message that parents should be discussing. When children are used because of disputes of adults as pawns, then we are going in the wrong direction. If those who are disagreeing with us right now do not think it is within their mandate to sit with us and continue to discuss our disagreements, that is their right. That is their right. If they choose to play it out in the public forum, that is their choice. Whether right or wrong, that is their choice. There are certain rules. But if any of us use our children as pawns, that is wrong. If we want to mobilize our student councils, let us mobilize them for child violence. If we want to mobilize our student councils, let us mobilize them for the rights of the child. If we want our children out there marching, let our children march for healthy lifestyles. Let our children march for their rights. Don't let our children march for adult disputes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Representative, for St. George South. Just as you're about to come, I would ask the Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, would you please? Honourable Representative for St. John.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And also, and
Deputy Speaker in the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I hope I remember to put the deputy, because on my speech it didn't call for a deputy, but that's how life goes. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I rise to support the revenues and estimates for the 2019 budget. I'm also graciously pleased to represent the people of the great parish of St. John. And I take this opportunity to say a special good morning to them and to all those who are here in the House of Parliament. Special thanks to the Chairman of the Cabinet, the Right Honorable Dr. Keith Mitchell, for his visionary leadership and support with respect to the implementation of programs and projects in my constituency, as well as the ministry overall. So we continue to pray for health and strength to serve, and for all of us to serve well. Mr. Speaker, I will now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will now present the strategic context, present on the strategic context of the Ministry of Climate Resilience, which also include environment, disaster management, information, forestry, and fisheries. So it's a huge ministry, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So in case I go over, I would beg your indulgence. And also, if the Speaker comes in, you could express that sentiment for me, please. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the creation of the Ministry of Climate Resilience, the environment et al. Firstly, it brings a strategic focus to natural resource management. because you know that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, our country is about 133 square miles, which we have to protect, but our economic zone, or marine economic zone, is many, many times bigger than that. So the focus of this ministry is to protect the landmass and also to preserve our marine environment. And you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there is a strategic link to disaster management. And thirdly, there is a strong mandate in our ministry to mobilize resources in the area of climate finance. So I'm pleased to share with you the approved mission and vision statement of our new ministry. It says, to be the premier agency of government, mobilizing resources and leading actions that will minimize the impact of climate change at all levels of society. And our vision is to achieve a smart island state through sustained protection and management of our natural resource and environmental assets. So, Mr. Speaker, we know what we are about. And we know that with our building for climate resilience, it would take additional revenue. As a matter of fact, I worked for a number of years in Canada building communication towers. And the most wind we would ever design, therefore, is 90 miles an hour. And even buildings. But here, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have to design for 150 miles an hour. That requires more concrete, more steel, and a lot more, well, more labor. So you know that to be climate resilient, it costs a lot more money. And that is what we are preaching, is because we want to be able to withstand any of the natural disasters that may come to us. So the allocation for this ministry, Mr. Deputy Speaker, for the next year would be $22,441,107. So this represents an increase of close to $5 million from our last budget. The recurrent expenditure is about $5.5 million. So we have to raise approximately $17 million, and we would do that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, mostly through grants. So we have to be out there all the time. This ministry have 3 ministers, my colleagues, Minister Simon Steele and Senator Gawe. So most of the time we are out, Mr. Deputy Chair, trying to see how we could raise funds for the ministry and also to make our country climate resilient. This, Mr. Speaker, is a strong signal that we want to invest in our national economy and that we have the technical capacity to attract those grant funds. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm pleased to report that we are seeing a growing confidence from the private sector. In the fishery sector, our ministry received a number of business plans recently, of which we are now under consideration. So the proposed investment of some of the business entity is over $6 million, and it would involve some value added to the fishing industry. Because at present, we export, but we do not do much value added here, just a little in terms of the filleting and vacuum packing, preserving, etc. So we are doing a demand analysis for the tuna subsector, to see how we can access new markets with a better markup. And with better markup means that we would have to increase the quality of our exports. And the ministry have hired a trainer who is Mr. Welch, and his main responsibility is to go out and train all the fisher folks and those that are in our market and how we're going to maintain good quality. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I would now turn your attention to the global context of climate change. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is called the IPCC, presented on October the 6th, 2018. The report that was presented impacts the global warming, and that is, Mr. Deputy Speaker, trying to keep the global warming at 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is it's a figure, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in which they want to maintain the increase, any increase, because as we know that the average temperature is increasing and it's rising. So we want to see if they could put a cap on it, no more increase beyond 1.5 degrees. So there is a loud call to action for various governments around the world to make rapid changes so as to avoid a global disaster. The science behind the report is very credible, and the report indicates that the planet will reach a crucial threshold of 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is about 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit, above pre-industrial levels set as levels by as early as 2030, precipitating the risk of extreme drought, extreme rainfall, wildfires, floods, and food shortages for hundreds of millions of people. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we know that the Arctic ice is diminishing, and 2030 is within our lifetime. As a matter of fact, it is only about 12 years away. And that target, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is based on current levels of greenhouse gas emissions. So just imagine 2030 in Grenada, if we do not do anything to prevent that, we would have no coastline. Many of the towns on the coast will be underwater, like Grenville, Guave, the Carenage, Victoria. We would have problems with getting fish and agricultural products. So, Mr. Speaker, it's not a pretty sight. So, our Caribbean brothers and sisters is calling to limit the greenhouse gases to 1.5 to stay alive. But, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is not a Grenadian problem alone. So it's a problem that we all have to work to solve together. So far, the global temperature has already reached about 1 degree. So the call for 1.5 degree is to avoid going even higher. So this would require significant action in the next few years. And the report makes it clear that climate change is already happening. And what comes next could be even worse, unless urgent international political action is taken. We know that our coral reefs would be affected negatively. As a matter of fact, right now we do have a lot of areas in which we are experiencing the coral reef bleaching, and the coral reef is dying. We would have the loss of ecosystem. So these are some of the challenges, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that global warming is posed we are facing. As a matter of fact, it reminds me of if you go on Facebook, you would see it. There is a sculpture of a lady holding a little child. It's an ice sculpture. And you could see, if you look at it, you would see it's melting. And they had a time-lapse photo of it, in which you see that the child hand was dropped off. And right now, all you see in there is a little stump. So we know that says, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with global warming, our future is disappearing. So what it is, we all have to do our part, all the citizens of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit Martinique. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, 2018 is an important year for international climate change. And we will be going into negotiations with many entities for two main reasons. The first is for the adaptation of modalities, procedures, and guidelines, and that was set out in the famous Paris Agreement. Secondly, there is a Catalonia dialogue process, and that process will be to inform on the level of ambition required for the new mitigation targets, and that will be announced in 2020. So the main aim is to set mitigation targets that will significantly raise the level of the emission reductions. Mr. Deputy Speaker, Grenada is party to over 15 multilateral environmental agreements. And as a ministry, we are ensuring that Grenada participates in the Conference of the Parties meeting. The Conference of the Parties, we all know it as COP, the COP. And then, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it is a job for all our countries to have a visible presence there. And as you know, Grenada is taking a lead in doing so. So between October and December 2018, it will be a very dynamic and busy time as it relates to climate change negotiations. Yeah, please allow me to mention some of the meetings in the international arena. We have the Ramsar Convention on Wetlands. That will be in Dubai, and we know that in Grenada we benefit from it. You will see the signs around Livera and other places where we receive funding to protect our mangroves and watersheds, and our wetlands. The next one is the UN Biodiversity COP, and that would be in November this year. And the third one is the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And this one will be next month in Poland, and that will be the COP. The last one was in France. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the COP meetings, right, is not just like another talk shop. The delegates that we send, they must be well prepared to negotiate on a wide range of topics. For example, renewable energy technologies, innovative partnerships between the public sector, the private sector, and civil society groups, coral reef rehabilitation and mangrove restoration, and also highlighting the successes that we have had under the Caribbean Challenge Initiative, just to name a few. So this, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is part of our strategy to attract funding for support for all the projects that we have going on here in Grenada for climate resistance. As I speak, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we have 3 delegates at the Conference of Parties meeting which is going on right now in Egypt, and that's led by Dr. Spencer Thomas, who is Grenada's ambassador and special envoy for multilateral environmental agreements. And he's also supported by another officer from the Ministry of Agriculture and Land and one of our environmental specialists. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, so please allow me to discuss matters of climate finance, because without finance we can't do anything. Grenada was host to the second regional structured dialogue of the Green Climate Fund. And that happened right here in Grenada from the 6th to the 9th of November. So 12 countries were present, which include delegates and ministers and other senior technical officials from over 15 development partners. So besides the ministers and senior government officials, we had in attendance the Green Climate Fund representatives, accredited entities, national designated authorities, readiness delivery partners, private sector representative, and civil society groups. That event, Mr. Deputy Speaker, provided an opportunity to reflect on the progress that we have had, on lessons learned, and also to build partnerships and to further engage the Green Climate Fund and to explore new investment opportunities for both the private and public sectors. So, Speaker, I wish to inform you that the first structured dialogue in the region in 2017 created an impetus for the design of ambitious projects and programs demonstrating the aspirations to reduce the Caribbean vulnerability to devastating impacts of climate change. In 2018, we aim to further advance these efforts by boosting greater regional cooperation. So, Deputy Speaker, the Grenada delegation facilitated a number of bilateral meetings with countries and developing partners. And during the conference, there was a strong call to deepen regional partnership and for the way forward. The region committed to advancing the following initiatives, and that was the Caribbean region, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And you know that sometimes it's very difficult to get all Caribbean or CARICOM countries agreeing on one thing. So this was a major achievement. And I would tell you the 7 things. The first one was providing readiness and capacity building for developing strong pipeline with the Caribbean Development Bank. Number 2, readiness to improve climate change risk management and resilience in the Caribbean. Number 3, identification of a pipeline based on study of adaptation priorities for the Eastern Caribbean. And number 4, providing readiness support for engagement of civil society organizations in the Caribbean. Number 5, participating in an advisory group for private sector on the Green Climate Fund pipeline elaboration in the region. 6, continued support for the Readiness Private Sector project, and that was led by Jamaica. And number 7, identifying financing mechanisms for the private sector. Because, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the private sector also have an important part to play in being climate resilient. So I must commend all parties on such a tremendous level of commitment and consensus. And the feedback suggests that the meeting was very successful, and I must admit that it was very encouraging to see that countries and partners signed up to become a lead and partner in each of the 7 action areas. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Grenada will lead on outcome number 2, and that is readiness to improve climate change risk management and resilience in the Caribbean region. So let me just highlight a few partners under our action area that we'll be working with. SEDIMA, 5Cs, which is the Caribbean Development Bank, the World Food Program, the University of the West Indies, Canary, and the Dominican Republic. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are well positioned to benefit from the Green Climate Fund as the country's dialogue specialist is based right here in Grenada. This is a pilot and it has the potential to benefit other regions. So, Mr. Speaker, now I'll move from climate resilience to the environment. The OECS member states, they are party to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and they were among the first. So the OECS, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we were among the first to ratify the Paris Agreement. So signing the agreement alone is not enough. So we have moved ahead, and Grenada was the first OECS country to submit its nationally determined contributions, known as the NDC. So that is not to mix up with the NDC that we know, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So this mitigation plan contains the amount of greenhouse gases that Grenada emits and plans to reduce that amount to pre-2010 levels. And we plan to do that by 2030, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The main sectors for emission reduction are electricity, transport, waste, and forestry. So Grenada commits to reducing its greenhouse gases emissions by 30% of 2010 levels, and we expect to do that by the year 2025, with an indicated reduction of 40% by 2030. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we are doing our part. And the cost to implement the migration strategy is approximately $161 million US. And out of that, 161 million US, Grenada plans to raise 161,000 million EC, so we could implement our plans by the year 2025. So Grenada anticipates meeting these costs through multilateral and bilateral agreements with developing partners, including the Green Climate Fund. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Grenada Climate Resistance Team is finalizing its preparation to attend the 24th Conference of Parties, and this meeting would take place next month in Poland. So I wish to assure you that we will continue to represent Grenada and the other small island developing states very well. And other small island developing states, they are looking to us for leadership in this matter, Mr. Deputy Speaker. So we know our vulnerabilities as small island developing states, and those are increased damage from the impact of storm surge through our coastal infrastructure, where most of our beaches and some of our plants and road infrastructure are located. Also, the extreme rainfall events that are frequent and intense, causing significant damage to our social and economic infrastructure through increased flooding and incidents of landslides. So, Mr. Speaker, the last rainfall we had, I remember my colleague from St. David's was telling us we had about, yes, it was right, 102 slides, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in just one rainfall event, and that was in St. David's, and that's not the other parts of Grenada. And we also noticing you would have some frequent and intense droughts, and that would be causing serious disruptions to our water supply. We have increased day temperatures with adverse impacts on human health and productivity, and with those increased temperatures, you know that we'll have warmer oceans, and then that would mean more severe hurricanes. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we commit to use every national, regional, and international stage to sound a clarion call to action. And that process, Mr. Deputy Speaker, has already started. In July of this year, at the Regional Ministers of the Environment meeting in Montserrat, we discussed building resilience on the front lines of climate change. And the reason for this is that Mother Nature is showing us that Category 1, 2, and 3 hurricanes are a thing of the past. Right now, we have to be prepared for Category 4 and Category 5. And we have seen in 2017 that there were 4 such hurricanes within 4 weeks, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And as you know, that has devastated many Caribbean countries. But we thank God through the prayers of a lot of our people that we were spared one of those passing over us. On August the 1st, 2018, Mr. Deputy Speaker, Grenada experienced serious floods. And we saw what happened down in the tourist belt. We had people, you were seeing them on little kayaks, they were going through what we thought was roads, were looking as rivers. And we remembered we had one in Guav last year, and we were seeing the same thing. We had people on boats right through the town of Guav. So, Mr. Speaker, and we saw even lately in Trinidad, you see people had to bring their mattress on the roofs. As a matter of fact, I saw one area where they said the muster point in that apartment complex. But the muster point is where you gather. But all we saw was a sign, the top of the sign said muster point. So which means they had to go on the roof. So, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, climate change is real, and we are experiencing, as I say, more intense rainfalls. We also, Mr. Speaker, recently felt the tremors of an earthquake, and that earthquake was centered right by Venezuela and Trinidad. And it gave us a good shaking up. As a matter of fact, most people thought that the Guyana shield was unshakable. But we realized that that is no more. We are experiencing some good shake-up, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Well, that means we cannot sit down, so we have to keep moving. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, with all these experiences, we will be going to COP24 to Poland to tell the rest of the world the story of how resilient we are and how vulnerable we are here in Grenada. Another program, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we had this year, the youth representative. We had the Grenada Youth Declaration on climate change issues. And I applaud the Grenada chapter of the Caribbean Youth Environment.
Speaker, in the chair.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. So I applaud the Grenada chapter of the Caribbean Youth Environment Network, who, in collaboration with the Ministry of Climate Resilience, hosted the first ever Youth Environment Conference. So we had 50 youth between the ages of 15 and 35 participating. So, Speaker, it was amazing to see the energy and passion of our students when they were discussing matters of climate change and such as how to negotiate our country's positions. And yes, Mr. Speaker, we are creating options and forum for our young people to take a leading part in climate matters. So, Speaker, I will just move now to the alliance between the other portfolios that we have. The portfolios of climate resilience, the environment, forestry, fisheries, disaster management, and information. So the Ministry of Climate Resilience is putting together a pipeline of projects. And we are using the Green Climate Fund tool to screen proposals. So we are working for all sectors, the water sector, the agricultural sector, tourism, youth, education, health, infrastructure, Carriacou, and PT Martinique, to name a few. So, Mr. Speaker, we are engaging the financial sector here in Grenada on climate change under mainstreaming component of the ICAS project. So we have engaged the banks, credit unions, and micro credit institutions and insurance companies in a workshop which was held on September the 26th. So, Mr. Speaker, the financial institutions, they are very concerned about the increased risk in lending, because when they lend money, you know that, especially to build property, build buildings, and so, because of the climate change, the added risks that it entails. And some hotspots are more vulnerable than others to climate change. So we look at issues such as the shoreline, the steep slopes, and riverbanks. So we also use that opportunity to discuss the risk assessment tools and options of simpler insurance options. So we commit to work with the financial sector to ensure that the climate risks are considered in the design of financial products and that risk transfer solutions will be available to our people. So, Speaker, we'll continue to mainstream climate resilience in the national strategic planning as we roll out the implementation of the National Adaptation Plan and also the intervention under the Grenada Water Stewardship Program. This innovative approach will help to reduce water risks for the private sector, in particular the tourism sector, while in parallel improving the water situation in most communities. It will also address the issue of flooding in the identified communities, especially in the Grandlands tourism belt. So, Mr. Speaker, under that program, we established 3 water partnerships, and that is the Grandlands Partnership, the Richmond Hill Partnership, and the Grand Etang Water Partnership. The Grand Etang Lake is a key water resource that must be protected while helping to increase its value as a tourism product. So, the Grand Etang Lake, Mr. Speaker, as I say, it's twofold, and we have it as a tourism product, and also it's a favorite spot for our locals and visitors, and also for providing a reliable water supply. Mr. Speaker, the Environmental Division continues with its public education and awareness campaign in schools. And we see this as an important element in our work to transfer knowledge to the next generation. Mr. Speaker, our ministry, with the support from GIZ, that's the German government, has developed a Grenada-specific toolkit to introduce climate change at the primary school level. It's called the Greens Climate Champion. And that is happening with 49 schools. So each primary school, as well as community library within the Tri-Island states, have received copies. And I'm proud to say that our Caribbean neighbors like St. Lucia and Belize are already experiencing interest in replicating that toolkit that we have started here in Grenada. So this, Mr. Speaker, shows that Grenada is a front runner in the Caribbean when it comes to climate change. In 2018, the Ministry of Education has worked on the integration of climate change topics in the curriculum of secondary schools, for example, in agricultural science. So, in essence, Mr. Speaker, climate change is now being infused in certain of the syllabus in our secondary schools so that the students would always be mindful of that. So, Speaker, I must commend the staff of the Environment Division and members of the National Climate Change Committee, which is the NCCC, for the contribution to the 2018-2019 Science Fair, which focused heavily on climate resilience and the environment as key topics on which our youth presented their excellence. Mr. Speaker, we also have a legislative agenda, so we will continue to advance the implementation of the Abatement of Litter Act of 2015 and the Non-Biodegradable Waste Control Act of 2018. Cabinet has approved an anti-litter committee, and we are preparing a transition plan to ensure that alternative solutions are available to customers who depended on the styrofoam boxes or the single-use plastics, so that we would have biodegradable options in place by the time the ban takes effect. The legislative agenda for 2019 will seek to address the coastal zone issues, the forestry policy, and the revised fisheries legislation. So, Speaker, we'll ensure sustainable use of Grenada's biggest economic assets, its beaches, and like my sister would agree, the Minister of Tourism, and our coastlines, because both of us in our constituents depend heavily on fishing. For this, Mr. Speaker, and also for future generations to enjoy. And this would allow the blue economy to grow, while at the same time safeguarding environmental and social needs of people and our ecosystems. So, Speaker, I'll now update on matters related to forestry. So, Mr. Speaker, the Forestry and National Parks Department will continue projects and programs aimed at preservation and management of the forest and its resources. The forest is of critical importance to agricultural development and for maintaining our sustainable livelihood. So in light of that, forestry and watershed management will focus on forest enrichment activities that will be aimed at minimizing the bamboo, the invasive bamboo, because since after the hurricane, we noticed that the bamboo is invading more and more of the forest. So right now, the forestry division is concentrating on minimizing this and trying to plant other trees that's resilient to maintaining our forestry ecosystem and also minimizing erosion. Yeah, the minister said we could make holes in the bamboo barbecue. So, Mr. Speaker, so we also would be concentrating on the trail rehabilitation, because there's a lot of visitors who, some do not want to go on the beach, but they want to come in to see our rich floral and fauna, and we have some wildlife, and especially we have some rare species of birds here in Grenada that you do not see elsewhere. And we have those ecotourism projects in the forest reserves, especially Granitang, Annadale, Mongazo, and we have new areas now as the Mount St. Catherine Reserve. So in addition, the department will promote Mongazo as an ecotourism site. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, the department will work towards implementation of programs and projects under the various multilateral environmental agreements that we are party to, such as Ramsar and CITES and the Convention on Biodiversity. Mr. Speaker, I wish to highlight the RECOM project, and that is the restoration and community co-management of mangroves pilot project. So we are working to increase the health and the surrounding mangrove forests and associated ecosystem in order to reduce vulnerabilities to the adverse impacts of climate change, and we are doing so in the community of Telescope, St. Andrews. So people are learning to do sustainable charcoal production, because from the mangrove, you have a very high-grade charcoal. So we are promoting also beekeeping, because, Mr. Speaker, you know that Grenada always win the awards for honey. And the reason, one of the reasons is that in many of the larger countries, they have large meadows and one species of flower, so that the bees would, would get the pollen from that one species. But here in Grenada, we have many different species, and especially the various mango. That gives a very special flavor to our honey. So that's one of the reasons why we are always winning the world's best honey. And that's why the people in Trinidad really want our honey, and the powers that be don't want it down in Trinidad. So we are also promoting, Mr. Chair, the bird watching programs, the ecotourism, and other livelihood initiatives. And to do so, Mr. Speaker, we are working closely with the local communities that will be involved, because that's the area where most of the visitors will be going. And then we want to sensitize them so that they would know that our bird life, we have to protect it. Even and most people are scared of what they call serpents and snakes, and when they see one, they believe that you have a right to kill them. Because as a matter of fact, when I was growing up, Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure, they say that if you kill a serpent, you're going to lose a sin. One a sin would be wiped away from your soul, like that. But right now we know that that's not the case. So we need to leave our snakes, because they provide a vital benefit to our ecosystem, Mr. Speaker. So, Speaker, the Fisheries Division So we are working towards meeting our 25% target, and that is set for the protection of our near-shore marine environment, and we have to do so by 2020. And that is under our commitments that we made through the Caribbean Challenge Initiative. So in that regard, consultations have already started, and we have all those consultations in the other ones, and we have started in Guave, Victoria, and that is to discuss the next MPA to be launched, which will be in Guave, and Rivera as our next one. So on the Guave MPA, Mr. Speaker, in the past few weeks, we held consultation with fishers from St. John and also St. Mark to finalize the proposal for establishing a marine protected area from Grand Roy to Victoria. And the tagline for this MPA is, "Our fish, our future, conservation in local hands." So, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to report that as a result of the community-led awareness campaign for the Guave MPA, we have Mr. Cecil Marquez. He was presented with the Gladden Memorial Award in San Andres, Colombia, in the first week of November 2018. So he is the first Eastern Caribbean fisher to receive this award, which is an annual award to select fishers who demonstrate significant commitment to the sustainable use of long-term conservation of marine resources in the Gulf and the Caribbean region. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud to see another Guave man representing Grenada very well. I guess if we had other St. John's representative, I might get a little table knock. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I must admit that the consultation on the Guave MPA is a rewarding experience. We have finalized the consultations, and we will soon appoint the Advisory Stakeholder Council, which would have representation from St. John and St. Mark. We will also sign a co-management agreement, and this would be the first of its kind. So, Mr. Speaker, we had a consultation last Monday with the fishermen from St. John and St. Mark, and they were so impressed with the presentation for the MPA that the fishermen in St. Mark asked if they could get an MPA going from Victoria to Duquesne. So we are very happy for that. So we are entering a phase 2 with the Guave MPA, and this process would be to extend the MPA from Victoria to Duquesne at the request of the local fishermen. So, Mr. Speaker, we will continue working with the people in this regard, and in that connection, I'm pleased to announce that going to the meeting in Nairobi, Kenya, to attend. The meeting will be on the Sustainable Blue Economy Conference next week, and we have 3 fishermen going to that meeting, Mr. Speaker. We have 2 from St. Mark's and 1 from St. John. And asking for one of Grenville. We also have somebody from Grenville, but they. Let me just speak. Yes, we do have somebody from St. Andrew going, so we're trying to spread it around. So, Mr. Speaker, the work to establish the MPA at Rivera, that has commenced, and I will provide more information on this at our next sit-in. We have, I know I'm watching the time because I know Mr. Speaker said he wants to do lunch, so we have. The Prime Minister spoke about the coast, so I will not take too much speaking on that, which is the Caribbean Ocean Asset Sustainable Facility. So in 2018-2019 hurricane season, this coast insurance would kick in. So I can safely say that it is a parametric insurance, and it will benefit we have 3,404 registered fishers in Grenada, Carriacou, and Petit-Matic, Mr. Speaker, and this would be a level of protection that we'll have for the first time in where we would have insurance to help our fisher folks get back on their feet in case we have any natural disasters. So this would help in protecting the food security of our nations, and also the security and investment of and the sustaining livelihoods within the fishery sector. So, Mr. Speaker, we are doing things. We are working. Fishers receive significant incentives from the government in form of concessions we do it concessions for both outdoor and inboard engines, both repair material, both building material, the construction of commercial fishing vessels, fishing materials and equipment, navigation and safety items, deck equipment, boat auxiliary supplies, fish export supplies, and fuel. Presently, small boats up to 25 foot, they pay $5 for registration and for the vehicle inspections, and the larger boats over 25 feet pay $15. Mr. Speaker, the ministry commenced sensitizing the workshop to sensitize the various fisher folks on how we would roll out the coast insurance. So in 2019, the Fisheries Division will review registration and the fishing licenses in order to reduce leakage of tax revenue through improved documentation of fish catch and the related tax collection. Mr. Speaker, we have received complaints about the patrolling of the MPAs from various stakeholders and even tour operators. So we are in the process to review the co-management agreement that we have with our MPAs with a view to strengthen the operations so as to increase compliance with the rules of the MPAs. So, Speaker, in 2019, work will continue in the areas of improving fish quality and post-harvest technology, development of infrastructure through the maintenance of cost-efficient and ozone-friendly refrigeration system. So what it is, instead of using the gas that's harmful to the ozone, we are moving all the fish markets, the refrigeration and the ice-making equipment there to more friendly environmental freezing gases. So this would promote a healthier ecosystem approach and strengthen the fisheries co-management and facilitating the sustainable utilization of the fisheries resources. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to focus again, and we will focus heavily on training in HACCP because we want to maintain the HACCP standards for fishers, fish production, exports, the development of infrastructure, because if we lose our HACCP standing, then we would not be able to export to the EU and other countries. And Grenada, Mr. Speaker, is one of the very few countries that have received HACCP standard. So, Mr. Speaker, I'll now turn to disaster management. The National Disaster Management Agency, NADMA, is committed to disaster risk management in an integrated and comprehensive manner. The agency has made great strides in not only creating public awareness in this area, in the area of tsunami management, but has achieved a significant milestone with the certification of the parish of St. Patrick as the first parish on the island to be tsunami ready. I know we have two representatives here from St. Patrick, and they have the threat of the two volcanoes out there. Well, we only hear about Kikem Ginny, but there is, as a matter of fact, there is Kikem Jack. So two of them. And I understand that the Kikem Jack is even more active than Kikem Ginny. Mm-hmm. The officials, so Mr. Speaker, the official ceremony was held on September the 20th, and the target is to ensure that all parishes would be tsunami ready by 2020. So NADMA will continue to revise, update, and to test multi-hazard plans. Emphasis, Mr. Speaker, will be placed on the development and implementation of a comprehensive disaster management public awareness strategy and also a legislative framework. The training of officers and members of district communities will continue with the support of our development partners. The collaboration with the business sector and civil society in the area of disaster management preparedness remains strong, and this is certainly commendable to the group in NADMA, led by our senator right at the back here, and we will continue to ensure that this process remain inclusive. So, Speaker, on information, which is also part of our ministry, the government has made significant investment in the equipment upgrade of the Government Information Service, and the transition to digital broadcasting is ongoing. So, Mr. Speaker, GIS is now in high definition, and that's why when you look at the GIS, they are second to none in terms of picture quality. Mr. Speaker, the GIS has now access to real-time data, and the impression indicator reached peak levels in June of 2018. So this impression was 24,717, the highest for the year so far. The GIS YouTube channel has over 1,154 subscribers and continues to grow. And the GIS videos have been viewed over 604,000 times. So this is an indication, Mr. Speaker, of the growing appreciation of GIS, the services and the products, and also the fact that the content is getting a lot better and more interesting. Thank you. So, Speaker, in 2019, we will maintain the current programs while the upgrading of GIS websites and the equipment will continue. So, Speaker, the department will launch a marketing unit and a new program with the focus on the natural, cultural, and built heritage of our tri-island state. So, Speaker, our ministry is now 8 months old. And when I arrived, we have a number of national, regional, international events and projects which we are engaging, and we are delivering actions on them. I can safely say that we take our mandate seriously. And Mr. Speaker, we are building partnerships across all sectors. We have our first legislation enacted, which is an achievement, in less than 6 months after the ministry was established. So we endeavor to live the vision of the public service, to be a bright spot of high performance, service excellence, and unity in leadership. Heartfelt thanks to the PS, the head of division, and the head of divisions for all the various, we have environment, fisheries, forestry, GIS, NADMA, and we have also the project coordinators and all members of staff for the dedication, Mr. Speaker, so I would add a little few. Okay. Thank you. for the dedication, expertise, rigor, and commitment. And this ministry, to say, although new, you know, because sometimes we're going through our trials and tribulation, but the staff, Mr. Speaker, have done an excellent job, and we are going places. We must also engage our stakeholders after the normal working hours. So there have many people in the ministry who put on long hours, Mr. Speaker, and I want to say thanks to them and the stakeholders. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe that as a country, we have opportunities that we should go after, and I want to encourage us to seize the day to do so. Mr. Speaker, I would, before I know my time is expired, I have, I represent the constituency of St. John, and we have made tremendous progress in the development of both infrastructure and, most important, our people. So we have done quite a bit to help develop our people. We have a record amount of scholarships, and also, Mr. Speaker, in St. John, all the students that have come for assistance, we have helped them with in the school fees, be it CXCs or whatever, MCC. Also, our school feeding program is alive and well in all the schools. And we have the uniform program. So in St. John, Mr. Speaker, we don't want any child to be left behind. I'm also proud of the other development projects. We had quite a number of our young people in St. John's going on to batch 6 of the Imani program. We also have the Empower, in which we have quite a few young people of the young men in St. John's who had problems with the law. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, I wish this program was launched a little earlier, because the unfortunate incidents we had where one person has lost their life, I understand the 2 of the people that were involved in that incident were just started the Empower program. So had that Empower program started earlier, we may have, but I know that because of that program, we look forward to good things happening with our young people throughout the island, Mr. Speaker. We also there was a special program that the ministry did for the young people of St. John, of Grand Roy and Concord area, Marigot, which was called Project Fly, and that program is going on right now. And I could tell you that a lot of young people have benefited from that program. And to the other people in Guave Cloget, don't worry, there'll be the ministry will do something for you all after this one. So I have to say that, you know. Mr. Speaker, we have one of our biggest problems in St. John is that of housing, because we are, if not the only parish that has never had a housing scheme. So what has happened is that our needs are a lot higher. We don't have a place like Almonge or Dunfermline or wherever, or Lacahome we could send people to. So which means that the cases that we have are severe, and we have to do a lot of building. So we have 2 housing brigade in St. John, and I would like to thank the representative from St. Andrews Northwest, who is one of our close neighbors to the east, for our help in that regard. And we have made, Mr. Speaker, because of that program, we know that there will be a lot of people in St. John that will be having a dry Christmas. No rain. Well, they're inside. They have new roofs and stuff, you understand? Recently, Mr. Speaker, the long-awaited sword-turning ceremony for the Western District Health Polyclinic that was a few weeks ago. So we look forward to that, because that would alleviate a lot of health problems that we experience on the western side, because especially where you have to travel so far to a hospital, at least anything that at least they could stabilize you, because I understand the Minister of Health have already told me that we will have some x-ray machines and stuff in there, which is something that's well needed. And he also said that they would have other facilities for mental health care. So we're looking forward to this, Mr. Speaker. We have done quite a lot of upgrades. As a matter of fact, we have the Lands Bridge was completed, and we have now the sidewalks that we have to build. And what it is, Mr. Speaker, a lot of people, they're building too close to the road. And sometimes we all blame physical planning, but as a matter of fact, they also have limitation. So we have to let the people know that, hey, don't build on these sidewalks or so close to the road, because what is happening is that we have a lot more vehicles coming in into the country now, and it's becoming a problem. You have people now have to compete with vehicles to use the road because there's no sidewalks. So we are continuing with our sidewalk program in Gov, and we're working with physical planning to see how we could get some areas so that we could put it, because it's a problem when you have to have people, students competing with vehicles to use the road. So, Speaker, we have done a lot of improvement in terms of slipper drains, even in the town of Gov and around. We did St. Francis Street, because St. Francis Street is an important street because you have quite a few schools using there, the RC School, St. Rose School, the Anglican Church. So we have upgraded that. The St. Dominic RC Church, St. Dominic Street, that's where the RC Church is, and that's where Fish Friday is. So we have upgraded so we did some sidewalks there and slipper drains. Also on the main road, Central Depredin Street, we have recently concluded all the drains and slipper drains to the Anglican School in Gov. And we right now in progress, we have Ferguson. What it is we call it Ferguson Street, based on the guy that lived there. He was over 100 years old, so they named the street after him. And we're also doing that. That street is located at the back of the market in Gov. And that continues. So, Mr. Speaker, also footpaths. We have done quite a bit of footpaths, because there's many areas where we're having a lot more rainfall, where people have to come out and go to work. Sometimes they have to walk with 2 shoes. So we're doing some 4-foot footpaths so that they could, keep your work shoes on or your church shoes. So we have done that in New Street, Central Gov Estate, Market Square. We are doing one right now in Gun Battle, because although we hear about Gun Battle, there are still a lot of residents that live in that area there. That's where Kirani James was born and grew up, Mr. Speaker. We have quite a number of culverts and box drains that we are doing because of all the extreme rainfall. We want to keep our drains and roads in proper condition. We have, there is an area that's of concern to us, where people have built retaining walls on the side of the roads, and the standards were substandard. So I wish that the ministry could be more vigilant in watching these walls. So we have, they take quite a lot of money to fix. So we have done one in Douglaston. I know we have a few more there that we would need to address before they come down. So that's another area of concern that we're doing. We have done, Mr. Chair, some major projects. We have lighted up some playing fields. I know we did so in Power Park. We did so in Loreto. And as a matter of fact, Mr. Chair, I know that right now there is a gratuity and pension talk. Well, what I did, when I got my little gratuity, I put the 25,000 towards lighting up Gronroy playing field for the people there. And I'm supposed to get a little clap for that. Thank you. We had the Mongrambi Community Center. We have just done some work there because it was, as a matter of fact, it was falling apart, so we had to redo some work there. And then we still have some more to do at the top. We have initiated a program of bathrooms, helping people build bathrooms. But right now, it's only limited to people with disabilities, like if you're on a wheelchair or amputees. So we have done some for people in Dr. Bell, Grand Roy, Florida, Mongrambi, Stony Gut, and we're hoping that if we get a little more funds, as the minister, my colleague from St. George's South talk about the extra savings, then we'll be able to build a little more, because that's another great need that we have. We have a help with the refurbishment of the Black Bay Church of Christ, also towards the construction of a brand new media center at the Concord Government School. And we're hoping again to continue with that with other schools, because that is, some of the schools never had any libraries, and the way to go is through those media centers. So that's a project that we have just did, starting in Concord, and we would like to continue to see it going on. I must take this opportunity to commend the government and the Ministry of Implementation for the environmental wardens, because this, Mr. Speaker, is we could see a tremendous difference in the whole country, but especially in St. John, as to what those wardens are doing. I know that in our constituency, we have two roads that go to St. Andrews, the Belvedere, and the other one referred to as the Bull Hill. And they used to be, in some areas, especially in the rainy season, the road used to be green because of the overhanging that was covering the road. But I'm pleased to say that those gangs now have keeping all the overhangings cut. So you could see a difference from what is being done. Also, Mr. Speaker, we see that they are cleaning the drains and they are planting flowers. They're beautifying the country. They are cleaning the playing fields for the schools. So it's a tremendous benefit that we have to those gangs, and I thank the government and the ministry for that. In the budget, I realize that we have a little more money for roads. I'm looking forward to that, because we have quite a few roads to do. We did the Black Bay Road by the Anglican Church, and we have. I know that this is an area that a lot of people are clamoring for, Mr. Speaker, but we know that the budget is tight, so we have to manage it very carefully. I'm watching at the time, Mr. Speaker. You said you want to eat by 12:30, and I know that I wouldn't want to keep you from having your lunch. So, how am I doing on time? Yeah. Okay, Mr. Chair. We have what is it? I briefly spoke about the fishing in Guelph, but what it is that the government would like to make the markets, the fish markets, more sustainable and managed more efficiently. So we put out some requests for people that are interested in coming to bid on it or give a project, because it would be an area that we in Guelph will be looking for, because right now, because the fish market we're not making any money on it right now, so we're losing money. But it is an area where it could be run more efficiently, where we could turn it from losing to making, because we noticed that Grand Mall, Mr. Ince, he had at least the fish market there, and right now it's very profitable. So we have the one in Guelph and in St. Andrew that we are looking to privatize. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will just take half a minute to thank my colleagues in the ministry right behind me. I see some of my members of staff from the office in Guelph and the PS, the Chief Fisheries Officer and others, and all my cabinet colleagues. I want to say thank you. Thank you for your cooperation. And I want to take this opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to thank you and your staff and everyone, and also wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a happy, healthy, and wealthy 2019. Thank you.
Honorable members, we will now adjourn for lunch, and we should be back here at 1:35. At 1:35. From the distance, I cannot see the numbers so well. So let's say 1:35. That's what I see. Huh? 1:35. That's what I saw. So we'll be back here at 1:35. We must make up the time, you see? So, all right. House stands adjourned. Back here at 1:40, please. Thank you.
Well, you had more? You had more?
Finance Minister says acceding to unions' request for a 25% advance payment of pension will cripple the country. Details to this story and more coming up in the National Report. Welcome back with the details to the news for today, Wednesday, November 21st, 2018. I am Wendy Edmond. Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Dr. the Right Honourable Keith Mitchell, says any decision to accede to the request by trade unions and workers for 25% advance payment of pension under the current construct will cripple the country financially. Dr. Mitchell was at the time presenting the 2019 estimates of revenue and expenditure, which provide for total expenditure of $1,134,013,956. The government has offered a 2% gratuity and 98% reduced pension, the net effect of which is a smaller advanced payment but a bigger monthly pension to retirees. Addressing the issue for the first time since teachers and public officers decided to take action and stay away from the workplace, Dr. Mitchell said the union's current demands should not be looked at in isolation, but in the context of all that has been done for public workers and the need to share the state's resources among all sectors. He said government remains resolute in its position that the issue must be resolved in the best interest of workers and the country.
We remain committed, Mr. Speaker, to offering the best possible package to the workers within the context of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Mr. Speaker, acceding to the union demands of 25% advance payment of pension, called gratuity, within the current construct, I must repeat, within the current construct, will cripple the country financially. It is simply not feasible, given our current and projected revenue stream, to meet these demands and to further sustain them over the long term.
Dr. Mitchell said all the resources of the state cannot be given only to those who are represented by unions, but instead shared equally to benefit the voiceless, the unemployed, and the vulnerable.
We cannot give all the resources of the state to who have a voice and who are represented by trade unions. We have to look at the welfare of thousands of working people who are all unorganized and have no real voice. We must speak for them, Mr. Speaker. We have to take care of the hundreds of single mothers who are low skilled and unable to enter the job market. We have to look after the thousands of unemployed youth. We have to take care of hundreds of elderly citizens who we have to care for in their homes. We have to take care of the young men who find themselves in trouble. We have to give them a second chance.
Affordability and sustainability are two critical elements for any pension plan, and Dr. Mitchell said Grenada has been cautioned to properly manage its pension program.
Regional and international organizations have cautioned us that pension program must be managed. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, we must be fiscally prudent with our decisions, or we run the risk of undoing the tremendous gains we have made in recent years and lose considerable funding we have acquired through prudent fiscal discipline. Mr. Speaker, I don't believe anyone in this country want to see us take a decision that between January and February, March this next year, that we lose 94 million EC dollars because of the decision that we take today.
The new National Party administration is the only government to have addressed pension reform since 1984. Hundreds of new jobs will be created in 2019 with the coming on stream of a number of major public sector projects, providing more evidence that Grenada's positive economic trajectory is bringing tangible benefits to the population. Presenting the country's billion-dollar budget on Wednesday, Prime Minister and Minister for Finance, Dr. the Right Honourable Keith Mitchell, said these will include upgrade to the St. Patrick Road network, the Western Corridor Road project, and Phase 3 of the Agriculture Feeder Roads project.
The St. Patrick Road Network Program upgrade. The St. Patrick Road Network is expected to commence in 2019. Phase 1 of this project will cost $27 million and will see the creation of 350 new jobs for the citizens in this rural part of our country. The UK SIF Western Main Road Corridor project. This project is valued at $46 million and will commence in 2019 and is expected to create over 300 jobs during that phase of work. The Grenada Agricultural Feeder Roads project Phase 3, Mr. Speaker, that work will commence in 2019 and that phase will cost $101.8 million and create 400 new jobs. The Gore Extreme Rainfall Project, construction of this project will begin in 2019 with the estimated cost of $27.7 million. The St. John River Flood Mitigation Project, the tendering phase for construction will begin in 2019. And $12.2 million will be invested in this project. The restoration of government buildings. Mr. Speaker, will repair and restore government buildings which are currently not in use. At least $10 million will be invested in this project. Contracts for this project will be done on a parish basis, creating equal opportunity for contractors across the country to bid for projects in their respective parishes. This project will not only create hundreds of jobs around the country, but will ultimately reduce the amount of rent paid by government for office space and other facilities.
This is the National Report. More news after the break.
The National Cultural Awards and Dinner, Saturday, November 24th.
Radisson Ballroom at 7 p.m. It's a red carpet event honoring our cultural icons.
An expression of appreciation for their contributions.
Join with us and celebrate their great works. Limited tickets available for $150 at the Grenada Cultural Foundation. Call us on 435-2839.
Dress formal and share in the experience. Feature speaker, the legendary Paul Keynes Douglas. The National Cultural Awards and Dinner, a Grenada Cultural Foundation initiative supported by the National Lotteries Authority and the Grenada Tourism Authority.
Welcome back. Building resilience, advancing social development, transforming our economy was the theme under which Prime Minister Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell presented the 2019 estimates of revenue and expenditure on Wednesday. The $1,134,013,956 budget focuses mainly on building buffers to deal with the effects of economic shocks. A breakdown of the budget shows recurrent revenue of $780.4 million, recurrent expenditure of $637.8 million, current account surplus of $142.7 million, capital expenditure of $196.4 million, primary surplus after grants of $201.9 million, overall surplus after grants of $129.9 million. Principal repayments, $299.8 million. Prime Minister Mitchell highlighted that forging ahead in 2019, resilience will be the government's watchword. He says emphasis will be placed on fiscal resilience, financial sector resilience, infrastructural resilience, modernizing the public sector, skills development, tourism, agriculture, advancing social development, and reducing waste and corruption in public service, amidst several transformational projects within both the public and private sectors. Debates on the 2019 estimates will commence on Thursday, November 22nd. Finally, in the news, modernizing public service management, leveraging digital technologies to deliver integrated services to citizens and promote sectoral transformation, and forging inclusive strategic partnerships to promote change and drive reforms. These are some of the areas of public sector modernization outlined in the 2019 budget by Minister for Finance, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Mitchell, under the theme, Building Resilience, Advancing Social Development, Transforming Our Economy. He says government has sought assistance from the World Bank for support to the Grenada Digital Governance for Resilience project. The project's objective is to build a smart, resilient government that will adopt a whole-of-government approach to implement critical public policies and services. The Finance Minister says the ministry has been working assiduously to ensure that goods and services are effectively and efficiently deployed to citizens.
We cannot speak about transforming our economy without addressing public sector modernization in a real way. Although this concept was a subject of numerous discussions over a decade ago, we must amplify our efforts to ensure that goods and services are efficiently and effectively deployed to our citizens. Accordingly, we have agreed to take a phased approach to this process. Towards this end, Mr. Speaker, the government has reached out to the World Bank for support, which gave life to the Grenada Digital Governance for Resilience project.
Dr. Mitchell says that the project will enhance and improve the development of the e-government services to its people.
This project will identify, improve, and fortify the core of institutional functions, processes, and information systems that constitute the backbone for the development of e-government services to the citizens of our country. It will also lay the foundation for critical public sector systems that keep the government functional, including in times of natural catastrophic incidents and other challenges.
And that's it for the National Report for today, Wednesday, November 21st, 2018. On behalf of all of us in the newsroom, I am Wendy Edmond, thanking you for viewing.
up to date with all that's happening with the new National Party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.